Faites l'appel, s'il vous plaît, Madame le greffier.
Monsieur le Sénateur Gorst.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Farnham.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Ferguson.
Présent.
Monsieur le Sénateur Lefondre.
Présent.
Madame le Sénateur Valois. Madame le Sénateur Moore.
Présente.
Monsieur le Sénateur Pallet. Monsieur le Sénateur Mezek.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier. Madame le Connétable de Saint-Laurent.
Présente.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Sauveur.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Brelade.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Grouville.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Pierre.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Connétable de Saint-Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Clément.
Présent.
Madame le Député Martin.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Southern.
Présent.
Madame le Député de Grouville.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Lewis.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Tadier.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Higgins.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Masson. Madame le Député Pinel.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Martin.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Ouen.
Présent.
Madame le Député Doublé.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Labbé.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Wickenden.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Marie.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Truscott.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Young.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Ash.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Morel.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député Guida.
Présent.
Monsieur le Député de Saint-Pierre. Monsieur le Député de la Trinité. Monsieur le Député de Saint-Jean.
Présent.
Madame le Député Lehegara.
Présente.
Monsieur le Député Ayer.
Présent.
Madame le Député Pershaw. Monsieur le Député Ward.
Présent.
Madame le Député Alves. Monsieur le Député Pamplin.
Présent.
Madame le Député Gardner.
Présente.
Monsieur le doyen.
Notre aide soit au nom de Dieu qui a fait les cieux et la terre. Amen. Seigneur Dieu, Père éternel et tout-puissant, qui a établi le gouvernement et les puissances de la terre, pour le règlement et pour la conduite du peuple, et qui nous a commandé d'avoir toujours pour but la gloire de ton saint nom. Nous te prions qu'il te plaise de donner à cette assemblée le don de conseil et de prudence, d'unir que les affections de tous ceux qui la composent, de les conduire tellement toi-même par ton Saint-Esprit que toute leur délibération est accompagnée de ta bénédiction. Réussisse au bien du soulagement du peuple, qu'il te plut de commettre à leur soin. Car nous t'en prions au nom et par les mérites de ton Fils bien-aimé Jésus-Christ, notre Seigneur, qui nous a enseigné de t'invoquer en disant: Notre Père, qui es aux cieux, ton nom soit sanctifié, ton règne vienne, ta volonté soit faite en la terre comme au ciel. Donne-nous aujourd'hui notre pain quotidien, et nous pardonne nos offenses, comme nous pardonnons à ceux qui nous ont offensés. Et ne nous envoie pas en tentation, mais délivre-nous du mal. Car à toi est le règne, la puissance et la gloire, au siècle des siècles. Amen.
Madame le Sénateur Valois.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le Sénateur Valois est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le Sénateur Pallet. Vous jurez que Monsieur le Sénateur Pallet est tellement indisposé qu'il ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Monsieur le Connétable de Saint-Hélier. Monsieur le Connétable de la Trinité.
Sir, he's away on state's business.
The member's content. Can I ask the nature of the state's business, Deputy?
Yes, he's in Nepal for Jersey Overseas Aid.
Thank you. Members content that Conatar is marked away on state's business? He is marked away on state's business.
Monsieur le député Masson.
Deputy indicated he would be attending remotely. So, excuse.
Monsieur le député de la Trinité.
No, defo.
Madame le député Perchard.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le député Perchard est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé. Madame le député Alves.
Malade.
Vous jurez que Madame le député Alves est tellement indisposée qu'elle ne peut pas assister aux États sans exposer sa santé.
Les États sont constitués. On behalf of all members, I'd like to welcome His Excellency, Lieutenant Governor, to the Chamber this morning. Moving to the consolidated order paper, firstly to the withdrawal of lodged propositions. The following have been withdrawn. All those matters withdrawn relate to the Island Plan 2022 to 2025. The 19th Amendment, Second Amendment, lodged on the 14th of February by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 32nd Amendment, Les Kennevet Development, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St Helier. The 34th Amendment, Field J229 St John, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St John. The 35th Amendment, Field J236 St John, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St John. The 36th Amendment, Field J939 St John, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St John. The 52nd Amendment, Coastal National Park Exclusion, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of Greville. The 53rd Amendment, St Brelade Shoreline, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 54th Amendment, St Brelade's Bay, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 55th Amendment, St Brelade's Bay Parking, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St Brelade. 56th Amendment, St Brelade's Workers' Accommodation, lodged on the 12th of July by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 59th Amendment, lodged on the 14th of February by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 66th Amendment, use of fields G403C, 403D, and part of 432A Greville, lodged on the 7th of February by Deputy Wickenden. The 70th Amendment, use of fields G234 and adjacent land Greville, lodged on the 7th of February by the Connétable of Greville. The 71st Amendment, use of fields G355 Greville, lodged on the 7th of February by the Deputy of St Martin. The 72nd Amendment, use of fields G538A Greville, lodged on the 7th of February by the Deputy of St Martin. The 77th Amendment, use of fields B26 and B27 in St Brelade for Vehicle Inspection Centre, lodged on the 7th of February by the Minister for Infrastructure. The 77th Amendment, use of fields B26 and B27 in St Brelade for Vehicle Inspection Centre, lodged on the 28th of February by the Minister for the Environment. This brings us on to public business. Forgive me. Yes, Connétable of St One.
Yes, thank you, sir. And I'm sorry to interrupt your flow. This is a matter of procedure and timing for our debate, and I would just like to ask members if they would consider allowing an extra half an hour for lunch tomorrow so that members can attend the funeral of my late father-in-law, the late Constable of St Mary's. I would propose that instead of rejoining the chamber at 2:15 tomorrow, we rejoin at 2:45. So I make the proposition, sir.
Yes. Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
Any member wish to speak on the proposition? In that case, can I take it the proposition is approved on a standing vote? Thank you, Conatar.
Can I thank members for their understanding, sir?
Thank you. That moves us on to public business. The only item of public business for this meeting is the Ireland Plan 2022 to 2025 approval, lodged by the Minister for the Environment. The bailiff was to preside over this meeting of the Assembly, but is unfortunately unwell. Members will be aware that there are a number of amendments, and for the purposes of this debate, the Minister will be the main respondent to those amendments. The Minister has indicated that he is willing to accept several amendments, as members will know from the documentation provided in advance of the meeting. If members are content, then the proposition will be read out as amended by those amendments, unless any member would wish for there to be a debate on any particular accepted amendment. I will now read out the list of amendments accepted and ask for members to indicate if they wish for those particular matters to be debated. The amendments being accepted are as follows. The Fifth Amendment, Children's Play Space, proposed by Deputy Doublé. The Ninth Amendment, Springfield Development Open Space, proposed by Deputy Ward. The 13th Amendment, Trees and Water Features, proposed by the Connétable of St Helier. The 15th Amendment, Corbière Walk, Protected Open Space, proposed by Deputy Truscott. The 21st Amendment, Disability Inclusion, Active Travel, proposed by Deputy Gardner. The 22nd Amendment, Disability Inclusion, Homes for the Independent Living, proposed by Deputy Gardner. The 23rd Amendment, Disability Inclusion, Clauses, proposed by Deputy Gardner. The 24th Amendment, Disability Inclusion, Historic Building Accessibility, proposed by Deputy Gardner. The 27th Amendment, Waterworks Valley, Countryside Access, proposed by Deputy Morell. The 37th Amendment, Aquaculture, proposed by Deputy Morell. The 39th Amendment, Conservation Areas, Deputy Morell. In relation to theirs, the 44th Amendment, there is an amendment to the amendment from the Connétable of St Brelade, and an amendment to that amendment by the Minister for the Environment. Connétable of St Brelade, are you content to accept the amendment of the Minister to your amendment?
I am, sir.
And you're content to proceed, Minister, with the amendment as amended?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. The 46th Amendment, Driveways, proposed by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 63rd Amendment, Amendment to Policy SP1, construction materials, proposed by Senator Moore. The 75th Amendment, residential delivery and management strategy, proposed by Senator Moore. The 79th Amendment, amendment to policy C13, our hospital, proposed by Deputy Gardner. The 81st Amendment, changes to passive house policy, proposed by the Environment, Housing and Infrastructure Scrutiny Panel.
So I would like a debate on that, please.
Thank you. That's noted. The 84th Amendment, amendment to policy C13, our hospital, proposed by Senator Moore. The 86th Amendment, St Brelade's Bay Improvement Plan, proposed by the Connétable of St Brelade. The 93rd Amendment, policy ME1, 20% reduction in target energy rate, proposed by the Minister for the Environment.
Sorry, I'd like an amendment on that one.
You'd like a debate on Amendment 93, yes?
That's not a good start, thank you, sir.
Thank you. The 98th Amendment, Tabor Park built-up area and over 55s, proposed by the Minister for the Environment. The 99th Amendment, minor proposals map changes, proposed by the Minister for the Environment. The 100th Amendment, Sustainable Communities Fund, proposed by the Minister for the Environment. The 101st Amendment, WER4, Land Reclamation, proposed by the Minister for the Environment.
Sir,
Yes, Senator Moore.
I might have missed it, but I don't think you read out the 40th Amendment in relation to Field 559, which I believe the Minister has accepted.
Yes, is that correct, Minister?
Sorry, sir, it's taken by surprise. If you give me a moment, I'm sorry, could I
Yes.
come back in a few moments to
You
check?
certainly can, yes.
No, that was
That's
the 40th,
Amendment.
40th amendment, so I need to check, thank you.
Yes. Deputy Lehegaray.
Sir, also the amendment number 1, brought by myself, I believe that the Minister had accepted that.
Sir, I can do with number 1 straight away. Sir, I thought it was a significant item, so I did not suggest, whilst I've indicated it's my intention to accept it, I did not include it in the list of matters I thought it would be, a debate wouldn't be required. I consider that other members may want one, but I am open. If members feel that there's no need to have a debate on that, then I can accept it and it can be taken as read. That's Amendment 1. I'm coming back on 40.
Sir?
Yes, well, I think members may need a chance to reflect on these matters, but you are content in principle to accept the First Amendment of Deputy Lehegaray?
Yes, I am, sir, but there are issues that are very I said I'll accept it, but if other members feel we should debate it.
Yes. Deputy Gardner?
So I believe that with Amendment 7, it's probably the same situation because Minister indicated in his response it's about parish priority 50-50 that he is minded to accept, but I'm not sure where it stands now.
Yes.
I can't remember what he says.
Well,
I need a bit of paper.
I think the current position is that there was no notification in advance of the meeting that they would be accepted. The current position is that they will be debated, but of course, unless yes, Senator Moore.
Just to clarify the point, we were only told that the Minister had accepted, and therefore the assumption was that there would be no debate on those because they were accepted by the
Yes.
Minister. So it does have a bearing on the running of the...
I'm sure in due course matters can be accepted, and if no member wishes for a debate to take place, then in due course those additional amendments can be accepted. Deputy Ward.
Thank you, sir. I've got the same situation with regards to the 80th amendment, which I believe the Minister was going to accept,
Yes.
and the 10th amendment, which I believe the Minister was going to accept. If you read them out, I do apologise. I was trying to skirt through a spreadsheet
didn't.
at the same time.
I didn't read out the 10th or the 80th. The 1st, the 2nd, the 10th, the 40th, and the 80th are the 5 amendments.
And 7.
And the 7th.
So it's
I
the
don't think there's
eighth-
any need
sorry, the
to
eighth amendment.
apologise. I was going to say, the next thing I was going to say is this is going to be a complex debate with the capacity to become very complicated for members and the greffier and indeed me. So we're all going to have to be patient with each other, I think, from time to time. And I understood when this matter was last debated in 2011, from time to time, the Assembly did break in order for people to understand where they were.
Sir, I may have misled you. I meant the 8th amendment, not the 80th amendment.
Thank you very much.
Apologies, sir.
Yes.
I meant the 8th.
Yes. Yes. So we want to get on with it. Yes. The greffier has the proposition ready to read as amended with the 20 or so amendments that have been accepted. So what we propose to do is get on with matters. The greffier will read the proposition as amended, and the Minister will reflect, I imagine, in the course of the morning with his officers on the 6 or so amendments that are outstanding, and in due course can let us know the position.
Thank you, sir. Apologies for this. I think I've found the source that I was looking for. So would you mind just listing for me the amendments which you are waiting for me to come back immediately, so I can make sure I give you that answer as soon as I can?
Yes, it's the 1st, the 2nd, the 7th, the 8th, the 10th, and the 40th.
So the 1st, 2nd, 7th, 8th, 10th, and 40th.
Yes.
Is that correct? Thank you.
Right,
I'll come
yes.
back. Thank you.
Thank you. I ask the greffier to read the proposition as amended.
The States are asked to decide whether they are of opinion to approve, in accordance with Article 3.1 of the Planning and Building Jersey Law 2002, as amended by the COVID-19 Island Plan Jersey Regulations 2021, the draft Island Plan 2022 to 25, except that A. Within Policy SP1, paragraph 6, before the word utilises, there should be inserted the word which, and after the words forms of energy, there should be inserted the words and the use of renewable and recyclable construction materials. B. 1. Within Policy SP3, paragraph 4, after the words accessible and inclusive design, there should be inserted the words having regard to the needs of those with disabilities. 2. Within Policy SP7, after the words meet the changing needs of individuals and families, there should be inserted the words including those with disabilities and additional needs. And 3. Within Policy GD1, there should be inserted the following new paragraph 2. 2. It has regard to and seeks to avoid or mitigate the impact of the development on the needs of people with disabilities, and the subsequent paragraph renumbered accordingly. C. Within Proposals Sustainable Communities Fund on page 78, there should be substituted the following for the second paragraph. Work to design and introduce the necessary legal mechanisms for the fund will take place over the planned period of the Bridging Island Plan, ready for inclusion into the subsequent review of the Island Plan. D. Within Policy GD3, after the words restoration of land, there should be inserted the words including infrastructure. E. 1. Within Policy H6, after the words to enable the supply of supported housing, there should be inserted the words and homes that will support independent living for those with disabilities and additional needs. 2, within policy H6, after the words proposals for the development of supported, there should be inserted the words or specifically designed and adapted homes. And 3, within policy GD6, after the words achievement of the highest standards of accessible and inclusive design, there should be inserted the words having regard to the needs of those with disabilities. F, after paragraph B of policy NE2, green infrastructure and networks, the following paragraph should be inserted with a subsequent paragraph redesignated accordingly and the plan further amended in such respects as may consequently be necessary. C, ensuring that new trees are planted in the ground if at all possible, with the rerouting of any underground services and other measures that may be necessary to achieve this being undertaken as part of the development. D, ensuring that where appropriate, lost water courses are restored and new water features provided in the public realm, especially in urban areas. And G, to request that the Minister for the Environment makes appropriate adjustments to ensure that consideration for disability and inclusion are more explicitly incorporated within the justification to policy HE1 and with regard to proposals to change historic buildings. H1, in proposal conservation area designation, the second paragraph should be substituted with the following new paragraph. It is proposed that the first conservation areas to be designated should be drawn from the following list: St Aubin, the historic areas of St Helier, the areas around the parish churches of Grouville, St Lawrence, St Martin, Trinity, St Juan, St Peter, St Clement, Gorey Village and Pier, and Roselle Harbour. 2. After the final paragraph, the following words should be inserted. During the course of the Bridging Island Plan, at least 4 conservation areas should be designated from those listed in this proposal. And 3. The Draft Island Plan 2022-25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of paragraphs 1 and 2. 1. Within the proposal St Brelade's Bay Improvement Plan, after the words visitors and islanders alike, there should be inserted the words and shall reference the St Brelade's character appraisal, including the report of public opinion expressed in the St Brelade character study and recommendations. And 2. The Draft Island Plan 2022-25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent to the adoption of 1. J. 1. Within policy ERE8, fishing and aquaculture, in the final paragraph, the words not to be supported should be replaced by the words only be supported where, and the following new bullet point should be inserted. It is required to meet a proven need which cannot be met elsewhere, and it would not harm marine biodiversity value. 2. The Draft Island Plan 2022-25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of J1. Within policy H4, after the words latest evidence of need, there should be inserted the words residential developments of 5 or more dwellings should, in particular, include a proportion of smaller homes to encourage and enable right sizing where appropriate. L. Within proposal 21, there should be inserted a third paragraph. The Minister for Housing and Communities will also explore, with others as appropriate, how developments of new homes might be expedited, including the use of prefabricated methods of construction. M1. In policy H6, after the words built-up areas, there should be inserted a new paragraph as follows. Land identified at Tabor Park, St Brelade, should be safeguarded for the future development and expansion of supported living or over 55 homes. 2. The Draft Bridging Island Plan Proposals Map Part A, planning zones, should be amended to include land at Tabor Park within the defined built-up area as shown in the area outlined in green in Plan 1 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister for the Environment, P36/2021, Amendment 98. And 3. The Draft Bridging Island Plan Proposals Map Part A, planning zones, should be amended to include land at Tabor Park as a designated supported housing site as shown in the area highlighted in orange in Plan 1 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister for the Environment, Amendment 98. N. On page 229 of the Draft Island Plan 2022-25, at the end of the third paragraph under the heading Delivery of Our Hospital, there should be inserted the words provision is made within policy, however, for the eventuality that the Assembly amends its decision. In policy C13, after the words our hospital development site, there should be inserted the words including the alternative use of an existing health and social care facility as approved by the States Assembly, and after the word site, in the final paragraph, there should be inserted the words or sites. Within policy C13, after the words will not be supported, there should be inserted the words except where it can be demonstrated that the site or any part of it is no longer required to support the delivery of our hospital, and the draft Island Plan 22-25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of paragraphs N1 to N3. Within policy C13, after the word practicable, at the end of subparagraph C, there should be inserted including but not limited to, one, considering the impact on the physical integrity and or proper functioning of the arterial road network to and from the hospital, with particular reference to the following roads: Tower Road, New St John's Road, Old St John's Road, Queen's Road, and the specific mitigation measures required where increased traffic will have ramifications on such infrastructure and surrounding neighbourhood, and ensuring that any proposal complies with policy GD1, managing the health and well-being impact of new development, and that it addresses the issue of privacy for neighbouring properties, with the draft plan further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent to the adoption of the amendments to policy C13. Within policy C15, at point 3, the words or increases should be deleted, and after the words used by the public, there should be inserted the words or increases the proportion of freely accessible public green space. And the draft Island Plan 22-25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of that paragraph. S. The Corbier Walk, as spatially defined in the Policing of Parks Jersey Regulations 2005, should be designated as protected open space and subject to policy C17, with the draft Island Plan 22-25 proposals map and the draft Island Plan 22-25 amended accordingly. In policy C18, space for children and play, the following amendments should be made, with the plan further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon their adoption. 1. After the words social and imaginative, insert the words as well as helping children access and spend time in nature. 2. In paragraphs 2 and 3 of the policy, before the words walking distance, insert the words safe every time they appear. 3. After paragraph 3, insert the following new paragraph. In the first instance, developers should seek to include as much green or natural play space as possible. Play space could also be provided as outdoor play equipment, playscapes, landscape design that incorporates play features, space for ball games, and dedicated space that encourages safe bike riding, skateboarding, and scootering. In some circumstances, indoor communal space may form part of the space for play contribution, such as communal games rooms or youth facilities. Other types of space for play will be considered where the developer has undertaken appropriate consultation and there is clear evidence of community support. In policy C19, countryside access and awareness, the following amendments should be made, with a plan further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon their adoption. 1. After the words Grand Vaux Reservoir, the remaining word should be substituted with and Valley and Waterworks Valley have been identified on the proposals map as strategic countryside access sites, and proposals that encourage, enable or enhance public access to the countryside here will be supported. And 2, the draft Bridging Island Plan proposals map Part A planning zones should be amended to reflect the adoption of that paragraph. To request that the Minister for the Environment makes appropriate adjustments to ensure that considerations for disability and inclusion are more explicitly incorporated in the chapter of the draft Island Plan 22-25 on active travel, and that within the proposal entitled Active Travel Network, after the words stakeholders, there should be inserted the words the Disability Inclusion Group. In policy WER4, land reclamation, for the penultimate paragraph, substitute the following paragraph. The fill material for land reclamation schemes, other than for engineering elements, will comprise inert waste-derived material that cannot economically be processed to meet an engineering materials specification, and that meets the structural and environmental protection standards required for the scheme. The draft Bridging Island Plan proposals map Part A, planning zones, should be amended as follows. The Pépinière, St Lawrence, amend the built-up area boundary as shown in green at Plan 1 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99. Land at Glen Wen, Grouville, amend the built-up area boundary as shown in green, shown at Plan 2 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99. Field MN402 St Martin, amend the built-up area boundary as shown in green at Plan 3 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99. Sewage treatment plant Balazan St Helier, amend the built-up area boundary as shown in green at Plan 4 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99. Field 0785 St Juan, amend the built-up area boundary as shown in green at Plan 5 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99. Land to the south of Montalabé Cemetery, amend the protected open space and built-up area boundary as shown in red at Plan 6 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99. And Mid-Bay House L880 St Lawrence, amend the built-up area boundary as shown in green at Plan 7 of the report accompanying the amendment of the Minister, Amendment 99.
Thank you. Before we turn to the Minister, Deputy Tadia, you have a question about the 43rd Amendment you've raised in the chat.
Thank you, sir. I did, and I wasn't sure if it was the right place to bring it up earlier about... I just needed to, at some point, because my amendment is relatively early on, to find out whether the Minister is moving... is taking his amendments separately. He's put in amendments to my amendment. There are 3 parts to my amendment, and it's just to know whether I'm able to accept one part or if I need to oppose all of his amendments. So it might be something that the Minister needs to deal with directly offline, but I just need some clarity about how to proceed.
Well, I'm sure he's heard what you've said, and hopefully he'll be able to communicate with you before that amendment is debated.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, Minister.
Thank you, sir. Apologies for the delay in responding on members' requests to have a number of their amendments taken as read. Running down my list, sir. Amendment number 1, I agree to, from Deputy Lahegara, removing 3 fields in St Helier. I accept and I agree that that can be taken as read. Amendment number 7, Deputy Gardner, which seeks to put the cap on allocations to affordable housing sites at 50% to parish nominees. I also accept and are happy to have debated as read. Amendment number 7, the use of Nelson Street car park for a youth centre. Sorry, amendment number 10, I beg your pardon, by Deputy Ward, Nelson Street car park as a youth centre. I accept, and I am happy to have taken as debated. Taken as read. And amendment number 40 from Senator Moore, a field at St Peter. I'm also happy to take, accept, and take as read. Concerning amendment number 2, and this is an amendment from Deputy Lewis that does propose 4 different fields to be removed. I've indicated on my comments, sir, that on one of them, which is item A3, field S729, I'm prepared to accept that, but I'm not prepared to accept the others, sir. So I know we'll deal with that. We're part of an amendment. I think it probably needs to be debated, sir. When we come to that amendment, I would expect the position is that I could accept that part in part at that time, if that's acceptable, sir. That's amendment number 2. If I got that correct, the list you gave me, 1, 2, 7, 8, 10 and 40. Thank you.
Yes, 1, 2, 7, 8, 10 and 40. I'm grateful, Minister, but the proposition has now been read as amended, so there will need to be debates, albeit short ones, in relation to the matters to which you've referred. We therefore begin with the 88th Amendment lodged by the Minister of the Environment, and I ask the greffier to... Yes. Oh, yes. Yes, Minister, do you want to propose the law, the plan as a whole now?
Yes, sir, if I may propose the plan as a whole, and I'm not quite sure I understood what you said just a minute ago.
Oh, sorry, well, I'll repeat it again. The proposition has now been read as amended, and therefore there will need to be debates, albeit perhaps short ones, in relation to the additional amendments to which we've just referred.
Thank you, sir. I'm happy to propose the plan in principle for debate. and in doing so, I will do my absolute best to make sure those I've just spoken about are dealt with exception of Amendment 2, are dealt with as quickly as possible.
Is the proposition seconded?
Yes, sir.
We'll therefore begin with the 88th Amendment. Yes. I mean, do you want to make an opening speech about the plan generally, Minister? It's a matter for you.
Yes, sir, I think it's appropriate. I try not to be too long, but I would like to do so, if I may.
Well, now's the opportunity, I think, to do so before I turn to the First Amendment.
So you're inviting me now to speak
Yes,
now? Thank
yes,
you. I'm sorry about the confusion, sir. It's been a while since I've been in this assembly in person. And, of course, the temperature's quite high. I've noticed it's not got any better. So today marks a conclusion of 3 years' work on this draft plan. It's been a huge task. We all know that it has been completed during the COVID pandemic, which has made it much more difficult to do. And of course, but still, I feel that we've arrived at a draft plan which the scope of the plan is huge. It covers all aspects of use of our very special, scarce land. As we all know, land in Jersey where every single square inch is argued over and fought for in contested uses and everything is debated. But so that is why, to manage that, we have a planning and building law. And post the point that law says it is to intend we'd have that to ensure that land is used in the best interest of the community. And the plan provides us with the tools. When I say us, those decision makers, planning officers, planning committee, and everybody involved with the tools to make those decisions. And of course, that law interferes with people's private property. But of course, all decisions that are made, and this is a really important point, in the public interest. And so the tools that the plan has given us, and there are here, is that we have policies. Policies where every word matters, which is why sometimes members feel that we're getting very arcane debates about the meaning of a word. But those words are advised by professionals, planning inspectors and others who tell us and advise us that certain words have a case law of interpretation and where they can be worked with. And so also we have a thing called proposals. Now, sorry, in the plan, the policies are in the blue boxes. So in every part of the plan, you've got a preamble which explains what it's all about, the reasoning, but then the policy in the blue box. And those are what we are, in effect, debating today. And also proposals. This is where work needs to go on during the plan period to try and deal with some of the issues which arise, which are not yet ready for a planning policy. So my job has been to ensure that we have a plan based on evidence. And I think also that it complies with the legal procedures, which are got ever more complex every year. They used to be very simple, but they're not anymore. And subject to proper public consultation, independent expert examination, and based on the best advice. So you can see all the evidence there. Because today it all comes to the point of decision time. And of course, I think many people would say, well, I don't really want to do this. Can't we put these off? And I've heard that so many times. Well, there is no hiding place for difficult choices we have to make as a community on behalf of islanders. And of course the reality is, and I'm going to be blunt about this, we have failed to manage our population growth. It was my aspiration that we would do so. It hasn't happened, sadly. We've seen a growth in population of some 1,400 per annum over the last 10 years, despite the last plan that this Assembly approved was 325 persons per year. And then, of course, during that time of the last 10 years, the last island plan where the Assembly produced, I think it was Senator Cohen, former Senator Cohen, that brought it here. Since then, we've provided just 400 affordable homes in 10 years, 40 a year. And yet, 400 completions every year. So effectively, you can see the small amount of affordable homes that we've done, we've produced. And of course, under our current arrangements, every year 20% of our new members of the community who join us to live and work qualify under the housing law. And so also we have a system whereby we issue licences. We issue licences to persons coming to the island. Well, it's right that they should be able to buy property, but unfortunately these are, in my view, higher earners who are competing directly with islands on less favourable incomes in the current property market. We're not managing this. And so it's hardly surprising that we've ended up into an acute housing supply shortage and affordable homes. And it is a crisis in my view. I don't duck it. And if it's been my job, I didn't want to have to zone any fields here. I can remember, I used to be an employee years ago in the planning system, and I can remember politicians who were driving the island plan at the time saying, I don't want to do this. And it was the hardest thing for any member committed to the environment to come here and say, we have got to lose this field. That is the hardest thing. And if I could have walked away from it, believe you me, I would have done. But would that have been the responsible thing to do? No. So, what we need to do is to make these decisions to make sure that where we have to zone some fields, that they should be, I believe, no more than that which is necessary to provide a component in an increase in supply. And the plan proposes that 16% of our homes will be from zone areas, some 600 homes. So they've got to be in the right place. Now here's some choices. And the best example I can think of is when you fly into Jersey and you look, what do you see? You see a pattern of land use with tight settlements. You've got the main urban conurbations, where we see our countryside and the pattern of countrysides and coasts undeveloped. The islanders retain that. And that didn't happen by accident. It happened because of island plans. Right back since after the war, I think there was the Bote's Natural Beauties Committee, and then the Island Development Committee, and there was an island plan in '87, and there was one in 2002 and one in 2011. All those maintain that policy of protecting our countrysides and our fields and ensuring we've got that pattern of development. And yes, that has meant that people in our built areas have had to live with and adjust higher levels of density of homes. And that means we have to do things to make those areas decent places to live, with community facilities and all those things. And I believe that's something we've failed to do so far, failed to do adequately. So that's a major challenge of the plan. And if when members have a think, well, why do we do this? Let's just pepper pot housing all over the island. Well, I go to Guernsey a lot, as you know. I think when you fly into Guernsey, you'll see a very different pattern. You'll see ribbon development, and I love our sister island to bits. But there's some choices here, and that's my point. And I ask him members, so if we don't zone any land for homes, what's going to happen? We are going to continually hemorrhaging our young people and our families and damage our economy. And it's not a solution, to bring in workers to do the jobs, to keep our tax going. It's not a solution. Now, we can't turn the situation around. It's going to take 3 years. If we zone sites here today, there's a chance we might see some of those houses completed and lived in by the end of 3 years. That's the timescale we're working to. It can't, no, but I think it's going to give people hope. So, of course, there are many voices who say to me, this is a developer's charter. You're abandoning all the strong controls that have kept Jersey special. They even had a suggestion that I should get COVID and put the debate off. But there we are. That's how things get emotive. But I know that planning ministers have to face that. I've seen it. I've seen the pressures on ministers. And for me, I've signed up for this. There's no running away for it. I'll complete the job. But they're not my decisions. They're going to be yours. The role I describe myself is what I would call a midwife of the plan. Facilitator, somebody who's brought this to the table, but the adoption is here. So there's a number of things I want to say. For example, it has been unsettling for our public that the flurry of amendments in the second stage has unsettled people. And I've made it plain to them that that wasn't ideal. And in fact, in future island plans, we should change that process. But to put it off again would just mean the matter would go down into the next assembly, and who knows, you won't get a council of ministers till next September, or I won't be there. When will they get into gear? They've got enough job anyway to deal with the next island plan. But of course, this is a bridging plan. And members have said, why make a fuss when it's only a short-term plan? But the reality of it is, the housing issues are 5 years. The planning horizon is 5 years. Because I said 3 years to get housing, they're 5-year assumptions. The infrastructure paragraphs are based on 10. Now, the area of the biggest uncertainty that caused us to have a bridging island plan of 3 years is in the economy. We don't know reliably where that's going to go. And if we didn't know when we hit COVID, we know even less now when we're facing with such dreadful global events, with the whole threats on fuel, inflation, and everything. I don't want to dwell on that. But so the future of tourism, the future of our economy, so we had to take that short planning horizons. So I think the choice today is for all members. This is not a perfect plan. I think it's the best that I can bring here. And I think it's a plan that I personally can live with. There are lots of things in it that I would prefer not to have to do. And I think that's a choice for all of you. Can you live with this? Can our community live with it? And I'd ask members to put aside pressures of electoral success. Put aside the uncertainties that members, candidates in the new elections are facing about their constituencies and what people are putting, because what is necessary here is a whole island view, a whole island strategic view. Yes, everybody will have their preferences, and that is right. But please bear in mind that we need whole island. We need to look at achieving that balance. So I said I'm not the author, but I've had to make judgments on all the amendments. And the test I've put is not, for example, I think, Deputy Tadier spoke to earlier, and I've had communications with Deputy Tadier over the weekend. As a St Bullards member, I have a natural affinity to want to take special care of St Bullards. But I have to make a judgment for the whole island. I have to look at the bigger picture. And so that's what's brought me to say I can either accept something or I can't, or in part. That I want you members to know, that's the basis of which I've tried to make those judgments. And I have been influenced strongly by the planning inspectors, because they're expert views, they do this all the time. And I've relied very much, and most of my adjustments I've had to make as what to propose to you and what not, are based on that. But there are some exceptions, and members will know that. I'm sure members will point them out to me in the course of the debate. I think the most important thing, I'm going to wind up in a minute, members will be pleased to hear, Key in our choices, for me, this is my personal view, is if we are going to have to lose green fields and accept that development where we would otherwise not wish to see it, that we protect our special coast and our special landscape countryside areas at all costs. And we are going to be debating very shortly proposals there, and I really ask for members for your support on that. So, all the decisions are difficult. We've reached a critical point. We can't put the decision off. Because I'll tell you this, if members do, I've heard talk about, well, let's put the plan off, let's have reference back and all this kind of thing. If we do, the problems are going to come much worse. So, having said that, sir, I propose the proposition in principle. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been seconded already. There are numerous amendments. The Greffier has produced a comprehensive running order, which I commend to members. We begin with the 88th amendment lodged by the Minister, and I ask the Greffier to read the amendment.
After the words "the draft Island Plan 2022 to 25," insert the words "except that within Strategic Proposal 3, creating a marine spatial plan for Jersey, A, after the words spatial plan, there should be inserted the words before 2025, and B, after the words territorial waters, the word to should be replaced with the words in particular to develop a network of marine protected areas which will."
Minister.
Thank you, sir. When I was preparing for this yesterday, I went through all of these amendments, and I formed a view that, unfortunately, we're starting a debate on one of the most complicated amendments in the whole lot. And there's a lot of difficulties here, and I'll try to help members through them. We have a section of our community who have an aspiration for special designation for our marine waters. And of course, our marine waters go out to 12 miles, which the planning law covers, and up until now, we've had a pretty basic regime of planning policies in our seas. But because we know in future there's going to be development in the marine area, it's going to offshore renewables, cables, all sorts of infrastructure, pressures of climate change and coastal zone management. We're going to have some planning tools, so we put it in the plan. So, but there are very, I know that, the Deputy Chief Minister has an aspiration in promoting our economy that a marine park would enable us to be able to special claim that we are looking after our seas especially, and that we can have marine protected areas to 30% of our seas. But it's a lot more complex than that. I share, and I think everybody does, the aspiration for us to have a plan for how to keep our seas sustainable and for arrive at sustainable fishing and deal with things like dredging and trawling. And we're already very advanced on that. With marine science, the states voted me money. We've done a load of work on the seabed, a huge amount of work in progress. But that has to be based on the marine science. And so I have tried to, in my amendment, which I'm speaking to now, include the aspirations of the Senator Farnham's amendment, but I cannot accept the details of it that do a number. First of all, they seek to use planning law powers that have no legal effect. They don't have any effect whatsoever. There's no powers in the planning law that enable you to do what the amendment, Senator Farnham's amendment has been proposing. It's in where we do that is through our fisheries management legislation. That's where we do it. Those are the tools. So I'm not here. My amendment proposes the elements in, I've issued what you call a consolidated amendment, which is what we did on all of the things. When we were faced with an amendment where there were parts of it I could go with, rather than have a sort of a ragbag debate, I put the things which I could agree and put so on and like in my amendments, and hope then that that would find a resolution. But in this case, we are having a debate because I'm sure Senator Farnham will make his case hard. But so, you know, I want to recognise the special quality of our marine land. I want to recognise its fantastic biodiversity value. And I want to recognise its potential in tackling climate change. Because what we've discovered with our science, blue carbon, the potential of carbon storage in our seas is huge compared with the potential on land. This is a fast-growing technology area. Now we need to work that out, how we can do it. And that's work that we are doing with other islands and UK universities. And then we've got the issue of our economic fishery. Of course, fisheries have had I don't know, I have to go on about this, but they've had a huge shock as a result of the Brexit agreement. And we're not out of that yet. And we are en route trying to navigate our way through the UK-EU Trade and Economic Cooperation Agreement that requires us, locks us into processes to agree to this. We just can't do it. We just can't say, right, we're going to have this. We have to go through those proper processes. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm with the Senator in his aspirations. I'm with these groups that are investing money in Jersey in this, but is it a solution to put this in the plan now? It isn't. We cannot do that now. And if we do, I think we saddle ourselves with lots of problems. I mean, we've got the potential for aquaculture as well. Aquaculture, all that's got to, and I'm committing to a marine management plan. And of course the UK are well ahead of us in this. They've had a law, the marine management law, a good number of years ago. We haven't had that. It integrates all the various aspects. We're en route to that. And it's part of the proposed of what I'm saying is that there will be work done and a timescale to get to that point. Setting out a timescale so the Marine Spatial Plan will be undertaken before the next island plan, and that will include marine protected areas. And I've already done, so far, we've done one at Portelet. We're going to debate that on the 27th of April. We have notified the EU under the fishing agreements. There are 2 areas of sea where we are having no trawling, no dredging zones to protect the bream nesting or the bream spawning areas in the seabed where they spawn at certain times of years. And of course, at the moment, I'm in danger of, I hope the EU don't object to that. They might well, but I'm determined we will do it. So we're already starting down that road. And so what my amendment intends to be constructive and positive, but I'm sorry to say for those reasons that I cannot support the text of the amendment from Senator Farnham. I think we've got it right. We need to manage. The island plan controls development. It does not control use. It does not control fishing as a use. It's development. And that is what I'm trying to ask the states to go with me, reject Senator Farnham's amendment and approve the one that I have lodged. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Minister. Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Now, there is an amendment lodged by Senator Farnham. I'll ask the Greffier to read this amendment.
After the words marine protected areas, insert the words within a national marine park to cover at least 30% of Jersey's territorial waters by 2025.
Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. This amendment to Amendment 88 accepts the inspector's recommendations of developing a marine spatial plan by 2025, including a network of marine protected areas within Jersey waters, which are supported, Thank you. Which are supported by the Minister. But my amendment to that amendment, sir, goes on to add two things by way of clarification. And this need not be difficult, sir. All of the research that I have done does not show this could be fraught with difficulties, but rather fraught with opportunities, sir. For clarification, the first point is that this amendment would designate marine protected areas covering at least 30% of Jersey's waters by 2025. Jersey would thereby be aligning itself with the Global Ocean Alliance's target of 30% of ocean protected as a scientifically accepted minimum for reducing the accelerating loss of biodiversity and protecting the oceans and seas' vital ecosystems. So I know members may be concerned about France, for example, and the challenges we've been having there, but I would remind members that France and the UK are both members of the Global Oceans Alliance, sir, and share the targets of 30%, and will be, if they remain members, sir, will be introducing those targets at some stage in the future. And so it's only right that Jersey and the Channel Islands, sir, but Jersey in this instance, aligns itself to those aspirations. By doing this, Jersey will also be maximising our potential to achieve carbon neutrality goals by 2030 through the protection of our essential blue carbon habitats. The second clarification, sir, is to request that the current and future network of marine protected areas would constitute a marine park, sir, an islands marine park, which would mark out Jersey's international reputation as a leader in marine conservation and enable the island to become recognised as one of the best and most accessible eco-tourism destinations. To clarify another point, sir, it's certainly not the intention of this plan to use planning law powers. Absolutely not so. We will need, as the Minister alluded to, new fisheries management legislation. Putting this in the island plan, sir, gives the drive for Marine Park real purpose and momentum. Fisheries legislation will need to be adapted to take into account the marine protected areas as part of the package. Of course it will. Fishing, sir, is a form of development. It is subject to environmental law like any other industry. And fishing rules would be adapted to accommodate the marine park over the period to 2025, sir. We are agreeing to 3 years, sir, to put in place the detail and the legislation that we will need to protect our precious seas. Jersey has a once-in-a-generation opportunity to show leadership by creating a marine park in our waters that delivers environmental best practices and rebrands the island as one of the world's most accessible marine protected areas, sir, if we incorporate it into this bridging island plan. The States of Jersey has already made strong commitment to marine conservation by establishing a number of areas, sir, protected from dredging and trawling, sir, and those areas are outlined in the amendment, sir, report. Marine habitats are already showing a strong recovery in these areas, benefiting fish stocks and other marine species. However, much of Jersey's waters still remain unprotected. Current MPAs, sir, or the MPAs as proposed in the island plan, are simply not enough. And a marine park would be expected to include all of Jersey's shallow marine habitats, extending down to the 20 metres depth at a minimum. It would cover a total area of approximately 900 square kilometres, or about 30%, 36% actually, sir, as mapped out in the diagram. Attached to the amendment, sir, 36% of our territorial waters. These high-value habitats with respect to biodiversity, carbon sequestration, importance for sustaining fisheries and the well-being of Jersey's population, would be protected from inappropriate development and damaging activity through the designation of marine park status. And as I've said before, we have time to work up the relevant legislation and fisheries management legislation to achieve that. The designation of a marine park would further build on Jersey's carbon commitments, as well as providing an opportunity to trial carbon credit schemes within our waters. From an economic perspective, a marine park would provide a boost to local fishery through enabling fish stock recovery and increasing catch price due to sustainable fishing methods, as demonstrated, sir, within the Lyme Bay Reserve, and I'll speak very briefly to that in just a minute. The marine park would also generate ecotourism opportunity through promotion of outdoor marine-based activities, as well as, sir, attracting scientific interest and funding. I want to talk briefly, sir, about the impact, sir, or the positive impact that a marine park will have on our fishers. The marine park would be an extension of the existing Jersey Marine Protected Areas, which are also known as no mobile gear zones. This would mean that the marine park would be close to any vessel operating bottom-towed fishing or dredging. Therefore, the majority of Jersey fishers, those using static fishing gear, such as pots, set nets, rod and line and hand diving, will be able to continue fishing within the marine park. In areas where similar levels of protection have been implemented, sir, i.e. the closing of an area to bottom trawling and dredging, sir, and towed fishing gear along the seabed, sir, increases in catches, significant increases in catches have been observed. So it would be expected, sir, that the fishers operating within the marine park, within our marine park, and partially outside of the marine park, sir, because of the overspill effect, would see greater catches. And going back to Lyme Bay, sir, on the south coast of the UK, where a marine protected area has been closed to those harmful fishing practices for about 10 years now, studies have shown that there are 7 times more scallops within the Lyme Bay Reserve. The same research carried out, sir, by Plymouth University between 2014 and 2017 found that numbers of juvenile lobsters had increased by 4.5 times. That's a 7-fold increase in scallops and a 4.5 time increase in juvenile lobster, sir. As members will know, both of these species form a significant part of the Jersey fishery. The marine park would provide a safe space for fishers practicing static, low-impact forms of fishing, such as potting, netting, hook and line, and diving. The marine park will protect vital nursery spawning and feeding grounds for key commercial species, such as lobster, crab, whelk, and scallops, that are known to be significantly impacted, sir, by harmful practices. It's worth noting at this stage that about 85% of Jersey's commercial fishing fleet operate with comparatively low impact static fishing gear, sir, such as pots and nets, targeting species such as whelk, lobster and crab. These fisheries rely on diverse and productive habitats for nurseries, food provision and spawning grounds. For the fishing industry to survive, effective protection of Jersey's marine habitats is absolutely crucial to allow stock recovery and protection of these important habitats. And that will only be achieved, sir, by significantly larger marine protected areas than we have now, sir, and larger than currently proposed by the Minister in the Bridging Island Plan. In our new marine park, sir, a sustainable local fishing industry can, and I predict will, thrive, generating wider benefits, such as increased food security, employment, trade, and an enhanced sense of cultural identity, sir, as pointed out in the good work the Deputy Grouville has been delivering on island identity. In relation to biodiversity, Jersey's waters with their kelp forests, seagrass and merle beds showcase some of the best shallow marine habitats in the British Isles. a marine park would deliver on Jersey's planning and building, Jersey Law 2002, which was developed to conserve, protect and improve Jersey's natural beauty, natural resources and general amenities, its character and its physical and natural environment. Well-being, if effectively managed, sir, Jersey's clear waters, rocky intertidal habitats, offshore reefs, and our characteristic and charismatic marine wildlife will bring opportunities for improved well-being and increased access to outdoor recreation, sir. The pledge by the Minister to a future marine spatial plan to manage activities in Jersey marine waters is to be welcomed. However, an overwhelming weight of evidence already exists to illustrate the need for a Jersey marine park, and the Bridging Island Plan provides, I believe, sir, a perfect opportunity to acknowledge the urgency that is required for the protection of these most valuable and indispensable areas that we are the custodians of, sir. And I use the word custodian, sir, because we have to pass these waters on to future generations. We have to pass our environment on to future generations. And members will, of course, noted that we are quite rightly now including a child's rights impact assessment review to all of our propositions and amendments. And in this case, sir, the assessment reads as follows, and I quote, "Protection of our coastal waters is in the best interest of our children. This is the development of a sustainable and ecologically robust area that will be safeguarded for their futures. The provision of a marine park would be in keeping with the terms of the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, promoting in particular Article 31, leisure, play and culture, which speaks to children's rights to relax and play. Article 24, sir, health, which speaks to a clean environment for our children to grow up in, sir. And with that firmly in mind, I commend this amendment to the Assembly, sir. Thank you."
Thank you, Senator. Is the amendment seconded?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Deputy Taddier.
Thank you, sir. First of all, if I can commend and congratulate the Senator and those he's been working with for the aspiration here. I think he's seen what many islanders see already and has, I'm sure, great concern about the tension that is seen between wanting to continue and promote and support an industry which has been a mainstay of our island for such a long time, to the point where it's not just an economic activity, but it's a cultural one that's deep-seated in, I think, our collective psyche, irrespective of whether we like fish, to eat fish or seafood or not. I think the importance of that for Jersey is in many ways intrinsic. But I do have some questions that I had originally when I read about this project, and which still remain, and I think which the Minister has touched on. And I think it's important to outline those concerns, because any vote that is taken in this Assembly is binary. And so when people look at what's probably going to be my support for this proposition from the Senator, it may not tell the full story. And the first question I've got, which the Minister touched on, is that, or a point really, is that it doesn't seem to me that it's entirely necessary to create this project. There may be other benefits for doing it if the main driver is to protect marine stocks. Something that I'm convinced of, that I feel very strongly, and certainly when I asked the public on social media and raised the issue, is that the public don't want any dredging in Jersey waters, and they don't want to see pair trawling in Jersey waters. I think it's well understood that throughout the world, fish stocks are being, the ocean's being pillaged, and there are certain fish stocks, I think across the board, in fact, which are just being completely overfished. And I don't think the urgency of that has been recognised in the same way that the urgency of the climate emergency what wasn't really recognised until the last few years, when in fact it's been a thing for decades. And what I would ask the senator and the minister, I know he might have spoken. He's spoken already, but not necessarily on the amendment. Is that it seems to me we don't need to have this project, this scheme up in place. But what we do need to have in order to protect the fish stocks is to simply have a ban, and it will need to be handled correctly, sensitively, in conversation with the fishermen and fisherwomen, because it is possible, and it is within our powers to say we will ban all pair trawling, for example. We'll ban all dredging, and it won't be limited to 30% of our waters. It will be in all of our waters, and that seems to me to be the lowest bar. That seems to be something which we should be able to agree on, and which we should phase out, I think sooner rather than later, because that is not just affecting fish stocks, but it's also having a very detrimental effect in our waters. And of course that would apply across the board. We know that the reality of it is that there are very few Jersey prosecutors who use that kind of technique anyway, and there may be more on the French side. That's just the way it works. I do have a critique to make of the survey process from Blue Marine, and it was something that was actually supported by one of the fishermen who independently contacted me with the same points. I went to do the survey that they put online. I clicked on it, there was a sponsored ad, and the very first question caused problems for me to the point where I couldn't actually fill in the rest of the survey. It's one of those questions which you can't answer because it's flawed. It's a bit like if you ask somebody, do you still beat your wife? Is the old saying, the old question. And of course, if you don't, if you're not somebody who does that, you can't say yes or no, because the answer given there's a presumption, an underlying presumption in that question. This question asked, do you think it's a good thing that Jersey now has more autonomy over its waters following Brexit? And of course, I looked at that, and I know that lots of fishermen would have read that, and they would have, as the saying goes, started shouting at the radio, but it wasn't a radio, it was the survey. And of course, the point is, they're thinking, hang on a minute, we don't have more control over our own waters than we did before Brexit. We've got less control over our own waters, because at least before Brexit, we could decide who we wanted fishing here and who to give licenses to. And now after Brexit, when we're supposed to be able to control our own waters, we're effectively told that we have to give all these licenses to French fishermen. So, but very puzzling. And the last point that I'll make is that when I initially read the statement from Blue Marine, I can understand why they've done it, because they're obviously trying to make economic arguments. But it's the strapline was for the benefit of Jersey's fishermen, economy and quality of life. And so I wrote back and said, well, presumably you're doing this for the benefit of the marine wildlife too, right? Because that was singularly missing from the strapline. If you're going to have an environmental, ecological area, then presumably that's to protect the wildlife. It's not to benefit local fishermen, the economy and quality of life, even though those might be secondary issues. It should be because you want to protect them, the area. And again, I'm getting this kind of dissonance, cognitive dissonance, when I hear about, okay, we've got these areas which are going to be protected, but you can still fish in them. So you're still allowed to have pots, you're still allowed to do all sorts of fishing, you're just not allowed to dredge in them, and you're not allowed to do trawling. I mean, well, as I said at the beginning, that should just be given. You shouldn't be able to do trawling or dredging in any of Jersey's waters. You shouldn't need to set up special zones where you can't do that. It's a bit like having an area of St Helier where you say, look, that there are some there are parts of St Helier where we don't want violence, you know, so these are protected areas where they're safe. And so what does that mean? It just means if you walk down the street, you're not allowed to kill or beat up people or assault them. And you're saying, well, what are you talking about? Shouldn't be able to do that anyway. So I think there's a lot of back patting going on with this, saying, oh, isn't this a great thing to do? But in fact, if we wanted to do what's been outlined by the aspirations of this anyway, why don't we just do it? Why aren't we doing it? That's the point I'd like to make, sir. And it might be overly simplistic, it might be more complex than I've suggested, but that's what I'm thinking in this case.
Thank you. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? Conitab of St Brelard.
Thank you, sir. I would start by saying, sir, that it is essential in terms of ecology, the environment, and the carbon neutral roadmap to protect the areas of the seabed where fragile habitats exist. The evidence that living organisms such as seagrass are capable of carbon sequestration, and this, sir, is not challenged. The process of identifying these areas requiring protection and creating no mobile gear zones is and should always be a fundamental principle and one of the remits of the Environment Department. The fact is that we've already designated 382 square miles of our sea to no mobile gear zones with the full engagement of the fishing industry is indicative that the process began some time ago. This has been a process which enables the fleet to continue to fish and access scallop beds in areas of shifting gravel, fine sediment, and other areas churned up by our strong tides where no damage occurs to a fragile habitat. There is no real need, sir, to establish a marine park to achieve those goals, and indeed the marine park plans run roughshod over that process. It's been shown, sir, particularly around the Welsh coast, that good fisheries management and marine parks are two distinctly separate aims, with the latter often displacing fishing effort and increasing pressure on other areas and less sustainable stocks to negative effect. Fisheries management, sir, in the context of a holistic aim to preserve the marine environment is a highly complex field, arguably made even more so and less achievable by the ideals as set out in the Marine Park Plan. The claim in the amendment to the amendment, sir, that a marine park will both benefit the fishing industry and be a major bonus for tourism simply doesn't stand up. The fishing industry across all sectors is opposed to the plan for good reasons. And I repeat this, sir, the fishing industry across all sectors is opposed to the plan for good reasons. Perhaps the Senator would tell members, sir, if he's consulted with the industry. In terms of tourism, there is little doubt that an island offering a strong agricultural sector and a vibrant fishing industry supporting good restaurants, serving authentic locally caught seafood will always have a far stronger selling point than an island just boasting a marine park on its own. This is insufficient, but we need to strike a balance. There are some major gaps, sir, in terms of science and existing knowledge around the ability of soft sediment and shifting sand and gravel seabed to absorb carbon, whether the use of towed gear does actually release any carbon that is present and what happens to any carbon that is released is not yet understood. Heriot-Watt University, so the global research experts, have done some significant work in this field and have placed serious doubt over the authenticity of much of what is claimed in the leading paper upon which NGOs such as Blue Marine qualify the basis for a marine park. Ultimately, sir, we cannot ignore the fact that our fishing industry was dealt a particularly harsh blow when we adopted Brexit TECA, and all the terms therein. The fundamental principle underpinning the TECA is that Jersey must continue to allow the same even access for foreign vessels to our fish stocks as well as to all the areas that existed prior to Brexit. Now, sir, 15 months into the TECA, and we are no closer to establishing this framework under the Nature and Extent Clause that ensures stability and continuation of the same access to the foreign fleet, now of course licensed by Jersey, while at the same time seek to establish a marine park that will place a ban on specific métiers or ways of fishing, unless, of course, our government is content to create a ban that only applies to Jersey fishermen. If we wish to ensure that the island has a fishing industry, and we give credence to the notion of food security, if we value our tourism industry and wish to show that we are an island of substance, if we aim to offset carbon emissions in a practical manner that sits within and is respectable of fisheries and all the other elements of the marine environment, then we have some serious work to do. The proposition for a marine park does not reveal the full implications and does not explain the consequences of all the aforementioned reasons. It should so be delayed and only considered when the full impact and all the details are understood. I therefore urge members to reject this amendment to the 88th Amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Colin Tarr. Deputy of Greville.
Thank you, sir. That was really interesting and almost took the words out of my mouth. Whilst Senator Farnham has brought this in all good faith, I believe that far more consultation needs to be done with our fishing industry, because they are clearly not happy with what is being proposed here. The 30% of ocean protection is being used, but it's got to be remembered our fishermen do not enjoy the 6-mile territorial waters that everywhere else around the world does. So they are restricted, as well as, you know, after Brexit and the TECA, and their futures are still incredibly uncertain. I also have an issue with not the company Blue Marine per se, but the fact that we are asking another company to come in and manage our waters. Surely we're capable of doing that with our fishing industry, with our environment department. I mean, it should be taken as a given. We shouldn't support dredging and trawling, but the whole management can surely be done locally. And I would like to hope that, you know, we can have a park, a marine park, and I think that is a really good thing for tourism, but we can't have a marine park for tourists that kills off our fishing fleet, kills off our fishing industry, whereby we don't have fresh produce in our restaurants from the sea. That would make it a complete nonsense in my mind. So there is a balance here. So I'm minded to go with the original proposition of the Minister of the Environment. But I'll listen to the rest of the debate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment? Deputy of Trinity. Deputy of Trinity? Oh, sorry. Deputy Gader, sorry.
Sorry. Sorry. This is a slightly weird amendment, and it's going to be difficult for me to try to explain. But basically, I don't think anybody more than me in this room wants a marine park. I want a marine park. I think a marine park is a very, very good idea. I also think that a coastal national park would be a very, very good idea. It would be really nice to have a national park in Jersey. We really need a national park in Jersey. It's something that we need to have. We should have one. Unfortunately, we're going to make today exactly the same mistake we made 10 years ago, which is that we're going to put in the island plan something that doesn't belong there. 10 years ago, we said, we'll have this special development zone that is going to be more protected than the green areas, less protected than the green areas, but more protected than the urban areas. And we're going to give it a special name. We're going to call it the Coastal National Park. The problem is that we use the wrong name. we called a development zone a park. And for 10 years, we've been persuaded that we had a national park in Jersey when actually it doesn't exist. We do not have a coastal national park. We have a special development zone where development is more protected than elsewhere, and we used a completely random name which doesn't describe it. And it's such a shame because there's a team of really, really good people who've been trying to work on something that doesn't exist, that has no statutory existence. It's a development zone. It tells you how high you can build, how you can expand your farms. That's all it does. It doesn't tell you what you do with the biodiversity. It doesn't tell you how it can be managed. It doesn't tell you how it can be visited, what sort of access there is. It doesn't tell you any of that because it is in the wrong place. Because the island plan is not the place where you define a park. So we did it 10 years ago. We can see now that we are still struggling with the national park because it doesn't exist. It's not something that has a physical existence. And today we want to do the same with the Marine National Park. Well, sorry, it's just greenwashing. It's just calling something by a name to make it look different, to make it look like we're working on the problem, where actually there's nothing in the island plan that can manage fishing, that can manage. The island plan is about bricks and mortar. And yes, we are going to have a special development zone in the marine realm where bricks and mortars are going to be limited. And we should do it. We should have that. We should be very careful. There are possibilities of development in the marine environment, more than they used to be. So we need to be careful with what we do there. And that's all this does. It's a special development area. It is not a park. We cannot define a park in the island plan. And frankly, if anything, somebody should have brought a proposition to say, develop parks in Jersey. Make a national park, make a marine national park, and develop them and put in there what you need to do for parks. But not in the island plan. The island plan is about development. So to put it there again is just greenwashing, it's just putting a name down there and said, well, we've done it, now we can go home. And that's wrong. That's really, really wrong. We need to put it somewhere else where it actually will make it exist. If we put a marine national park in the island plan, it will not exist, and 10 years from now, we'll wonder why nothing happened. The other thing is that I'm a little bit worried about some of the principles here. 30% means nothing. It may mean something if you are a country like France with 15 million square kilometers of seas, most of which in the pelagic areas with miles of depth, and to protect 30% of that is an arbitrary number, and why not? You know, it makes no difference. Jersey is extremely small and has a specific disadvantage that there are two countries fishing in it. It's not just us, it's not just ourselves. And that the French fleet is about twice the size, 2 to 3 times the size of ours. And we are trying to coexist in a very, very small area. To wipe out 30% of it makes no sense. It's an arbitrary number that just doesn't fit Jersey. The next thing is that protection in fishing needs to be understood quite differently than what you would have, say, in a national park. We have this idea that, you know, big area designed as a national park, you don't go there, you don't shoot anything, you don't damage the wildlife. Fine, but that's not how it works in the sea. When you protect areas with fishing, it's methods, it's species. So it's not something general. You don't say, well, we're going to draw a line around 30%. Actually, interestingly, 30% of our area is all the reefs. It's all the spaces that are being fished now, because there's very, very little elsewhere. So if we just drew a circle around Jersey saying we'll protect this, all of the fishermen, including the French, can go home. They've got nowhere else to go. But what we need to do and what we are doing is making sure that specific métiers can be used in specific places and that specific species are protected certain times of the year and in other areas. And this is technically very, very difficult. It really isn't about saying, well, we'll just say no catch here, and that's fine. Sometimes it has the reverse effect. It is something that needs to be studied. We've just made the Portland Bay a no-take zone. That took 40 years. And it didn't take 40 years in the Assembly. It wasn't a legal problem. It wasn't about legislating. It was about the science. We started studying Portland Bay in the 80s, and now we can make it a no-take zone with a consensus, with a general consensus, and it is still a study. It's not a definitive no-take zone. We're going to look at it. We're going to look at what changes. We're going to look at whether predators are growing faster because now it's a no-take zone and damaging other species elsewhere. It's the sort of things that we have to do. So it's probably going to be another 5 to 10 years before we can say, well, this was a good idea or this wasn't. The idea that in 3 years you can decide that 30% of your sea area is going to be protected is ridiculous. It really doesn't happen at that speed. The last thing, and I think that's quite important as well, we've vaguely mentioned this small contract with Europe that the UK signed recently. And it's funny that people should have forgotten about it. This is major. The Trade Cooperation Agreement is the biggest contract we have ever signed. Well, we signed it by proxy, but it's the biggest contract we've ever signed. And it has not happened. It's not something that was signed and then all of a sudden it was done. As you know, it's all still being argued about, and very, very strongly, and nowhere stronger than in fishing. So, first of all, I'd like to remind Deputy Tadier that the TCA has a specific advantage for Jersey, is that it gives us back our management. We did not have management of our own waters 2 years ago. We did not. We could participate, we could suggest, we could ask, we could beg, but we could not manage our own waters. The French decided what went on in our waters. The French decided who could fish in our waters. That has changed. However, that has changed on paper, but the implementation of that contract is still ongoing. And it is still a very, very live issue. To now tell the French, well, arbitrarily, contrary to the contract, we're just going to close this area of our waters, is not going to go on very well. And I'd like to remind this Assembly, this Assembly has the highest power of decision in the island, but it stops at international contract. If there is an international contract signed between Jersey and another country, or for Jersey by another country, this supersedes what happens in this Assembly. So if we say, let's close our waters, and somebody finds in the TCA, well, sorry, that's discriminatory to the French, therefore you cannot do it. That's it. We just cannot do it. So, please, no greenwashing. It's silly to use that name, saying, well, we've done our job, we can go home, that's fine, you know, we've protected waters. No, this needs to be brought back to the Assembly as we need a national park, a real land national park with special management, and we need a marine park with special management. But this needs to be brought separately. It doesn't belong in the island plan. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Senator Gorst.
Thank you, sir, and I perhaps don't quite need to speak as long after the previous speaker. I've got a lot of sympathy for what the Deputy Chief Minister is aiming to do in this proposal for a marine national park. I think there is evidence of the benefits of such parks to fish stock levels, to support fisheries management, and of course ultimately then to support tourist and tourism activities, not to mention all of the net zero benefits. But for us, it is not quite as straightforward as perhaps has been presented, as the previous three speakers have indicated. And it won't surprise members to know that I just want to focus on the trade and cooperation agreement. And whilst it has caused a lot of consternation amongst the fishery community, and I understand that, because on the day when the United Kingdom left the European Union and the ending of the transition period meant that for market access purposes, Jersey, together with the rest of the United Kingdom, was treated as a third country. And that has led to all sorts of bureaucratic difficulties, difficulties of not having a border inspection post, difficulties of categorization of Jersey waters and the cleaning methods that are required. All of that arises simply from the from the United Kingdom leaving the European Union in the terms that it did, i.e. leaving the common market and leaving a customs union. What the TCA did for Jersey and particularly in this instance for fisheries meant, as the Assistant Ministers just said, that Jersey for the first time in the terms of the TCA actually regains the management of its own waters. So in response to Deputy Tadia, that can be argued as a good thing or a bad thing. I personally think it is a good thing. It also means that the Minister for the Environment can issue licences on a robust rules-based process, which was not something that Jersey's Environment Minister was able to do before. Jersey issued licences to Jersey vessels and France issued licences to French vessels. And as this process has shown us, as difficult as it is, it's difficult for us to see quite the basis upon which the French administration issued licences to French vessels. It's certainly difficult to argue that there was the same rules-based methodology that the Environment Minister has now applied. But these things have to be done carefully and they have to be done in consultation, particularly the issue of fisheries management. And fisheries management is undertaken in concert with the European Union, and it has to be based on methodology and the latest scientific evidence. And I know that both the Minister and the Assistant Minister are absolutely committed to taking conservation measures in the Bay of Gronville waters to create a sustainable fish stock level. But we've also said quite publicly that the French administration are not yet, as we sit or stand here today having this debate, 100% satisfied that we have appropriately licensed every vessel that they have asked to be licensed. We believe we have. We believe very strongly in the methodology that we've used. But those conversations are still ongoing. And it would be, to my mind, completely inappropriate for this Assembly to now take an action which the French administration could use to argue that we are not using the powers that we signed up to in that international treaty in an even-handed, fair, methodology-driven process and in line with the terms of that agreement. And I don't think we should do anything that would give succour to that French view of the world. It would happen by accident. It would have happened with the best will in the world so that we could create a marine national park, but it could very easily, by accident, be detrimental to the Jersey Environment Minister's ability to ultimately continue to manage Jersey's fisheries in the best interests of a sustainable fisheries. And so I think that the work that Blue Marine has done, the support that the Deputy Chief Minister has given them, are good pieces of work, but should be undertaken in a careful, collaborative approach with the Minister for the Environment and with other relevant parties, particularly the Jersey Fisheries Association and the aquaculture industry. Because I think by working together, some of the aims of a marine national park and the aims of Blue Marine can be delivered, but in a way which is advantageous to all and doesn't have the potential to drive a coach and horses through how we are administering the international treaty, which is the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. And so I do, as I say, I understand fully the aims of Blue Marine. I understand fully the aims of the Deputy Chief Minister. And I know it's a trite phrase, but the hearts are very much in the right place. I think they're slightly misguided in wanting to ask the states to agree to this amendment today. And I hope that states members won't put the island's participation in the Trade and Cooperation Agreement at risk, even though there might be bits of it that they don't like. Would they really, really be saying that we would be better off in a free-for-all? I do not believe it, sir. I cannot and do not accept it. The better thing is for us to work together and deliver these environmental aims that the Deputy Chief Minister holds so dear. And he has my support in taking a different approach, a collaborative approach, with all of the relevant stakeholders to working towards what I know he wishes to achieve. But this, for my part, is not the right way, and it's not the right approach to take. And I dearly hope, sir, that members will not accept the Deputy Chief Minister's amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Senator. Deputy St Martin.
Thank you, sir. And I just wanted to say how good it was to listen to the Assistant Minister for the Environment talk about parks. Parks are things which, by definition, are recreational areas or are used for a specific purpose, and some of us certainly have been arguing for some time before this debate about the removal of Coastal National Park, the words Coastal National Park from this week's debate, and delighted that the Minister's accepted finally that if you want to create a planning zone, the last thing you do is call it a park. Anyway, I'll move on, sir. The Deputy Chief Minister in his amendment to the amendment seeks to create a marine national park to cover 30% of Jersey's waters by 2025. But yet the Minister seeks to do something very similar. And what I want to say is, and the Assistant Minister for the Environment summed it up very well, that we rushed into Coastal National Park some years ago, and we mustn't do the same here, because the Minister in his amendment, 88th Amendment, seeks to undertake further work to create a spatial plan for the marine environment, to develop a network of protected areas and to be consistent across the environment, the economy and across social objectives. And that's really, really important, sir, because if we're going to do this, we need to do it properly. It may well be that out of the spatial plan that's proposed by the Minister, we will come out with a park or something that's named differently. But I think it's really important, sir, that we don't rush and try to run before we can walk here. We have a most fantastic marine resources team at our disposal at the moment. I can't praise them highly enough. They've worked their socks off for the last 2+ years on Brexit. There is so many things to consider when it comes to fishing, sustaining sustainable fisheries, supporting fishermen through these difficult times, considering the biodiversity below the low water mark, the effects of climate change on all sorts of things happening at sea, and the effects on water temperature. All those things have to be taken into account. And then, of course, we have to make sure that we do our very best to continue to find ways for our fishing fleet to export their produce into the European mainland, and we don't want to be doing anything which makes that even more difficult than it is at the moment. So there's sustainable reasons for making sure we do this properly, there's economic reasons for making sure we do this properly, and as Senator Gorst has just said, there's management reasons to make sure we do this properly, because we must move forward and work together with the French as we develop any spatial plan for parts of our territorial waters which involve fishing both by Jersey and for the French fleets. So I ask members to consider this amendment to the amendment very carefully, and I ask them to look back at the proposals the Minister has put forward in his amendment and to vote against the Senator's amendment to the amendment. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. It's actually a question to the Attorney General rather than a speech, sir.
Yes.
Is that possible?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I was wondering if I could ask the Attorney General, it's just to clarify, because I'm concerned that this amendment to the amendment is asking us to do something which cannot be done. If the National Marine Park does not exist, which it doesn't, and if the Environment Minister does not have the power to create such a park, what effect does this proposition have, sir? In fact, does the Bridging Island Plan have the power to create such a park? Because to me it seems that we're discussing creating something that the Bridging Island Plan cannot create. And so I was wondering if the Attorney General could help me with that, sir.
Yes. Mr. Attorney.
Sir, yes. In response to Deputy Morell's question, I think there's two principal issues with the amendment to the amendment. The first is the provisions of the TCA, which are binding on the UK and therefore on Jersey in international law. And there are provisions in the TCA which contain protections as regards the nature and extent of fishing, particularly for French fishermen who can demonstrate the requisite history of fishing in Jersey waters. The amendment to the amendment, to my mind, does risk going beyond or potentially infringing the provisions of the TCA as regards the nature and extent clause. So Jersey, up to the 3-mile limit, where French fishermen are not permitted to fish, then we can impose restrictions on this nature, but obviously that would affect our own fishing fleet. In the 3 to 12-mile zone, where French fishers do fish, then this amendment to the amendment would potentially infringe the nature and extent clauses in the TCA, which, as Senator Gore said, are binding on us in international law. So that's the first difficulty, I think, with the amendment to the amendment. There are provisions in the TCA where restrictions can be imposed, which are scientifically led and as part of fisheries management, but that has to be done in consultation with the French and with the nature and extent provisions very much to the forefront in introducing those restrictions. The second is the use of the island plan as a planning policy to introduce practical restrictions on fishing. Fishing in itself is not development. So if one goes out and fishes as a commercial fisher and one doesn't apply for planning permission to go and do that. So whilst the island plan does extend out, and the island planning law extends out to Jersey's territorial waters up to the full 12-mile limit, there is a potential for some confusion if a planning policy is being used to impose some practical restrictions on say, a commercial fisherman's ability to fish, which is not, as I've said, it's not development under the planning law. However, it is perfectly permissible under the island plan process to introduce policies which designate presumptions as to how land and its territorial waters are to be protected. But there is a distinction, I think, in terms of, well, using a planning policy to impose specific restrictions on a commercial fisherman's ability to fish, which is rather dealt with under the Sea Fisheries legislation, which is separate legislation. I hope that answers the majority of the Deputy's question.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Attorney General.
Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? Deputy Ward.
So I just want to ask a question to the Attorney General and then perhaps speak after that.
Yes.
Can I ask, in terms of marine parks that are implemented in France, for example, is the TECA not, part of the TECA not an element of fairness and access and what goes on? So therefore, there is a wider issue regards France has signed up to marine national parks, for example, and if Jersey does the same, would that not address this issue of the marine national park as opposed to just fishing itself? I wonder if and I recognise it's complex with the TECA and the fishing rights that have come subsequently from it. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Attorney.
So I regret it's a little difficult for me to comment on French obligations as regards marine parks. I think the key provision for our purposes is the nature and extent clause in the TCA, which I've already alluded to. That does give protection to French fishermen who can establish the requisite history in terms of fishing in Jersey territorial waters. It may be that in other waters which form part of French or EU waters, then there are the sorts of reciprocal rights and obligations which might protect, say, a UK fishing vessel which can establish the requisite nature and extent history of fishing in the EU or French territorial waters in the same way that French fishermen have those protections under the TCA in our own waters. But I think beyond that, it's difficult for me to comment specifically on the Deputy's question.
Thank you. Do you wish to speak now, Deputy Ward?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, sir. It's been very interesting to hear the views on this. And I go back to the words of the actual amendment, which is to first of all give a date to the development of a marine spatial park, and also to talk about an actual percentage. And I was really interested to hear the Deputy for Trinity talk about greenwashing, because I agree. It's a real concern that whenever we talk about these issues, what we have is a really good headline, and we say we're going to have a marine national park, it's going to protect our environment, but actually what it does is something difficult. But then my concern is what the Environment Minister and other ministers and others are saying is that actually we don't want to do this yet, and we want to look into it further. And there was a phrase which was that aspiration, the word aspiration was used a number of times. And I always have a problem with the word aspiration, because what it means is that we'll look at it, and I'm sorry, sir, but this Assembly has been really guilty of looking and having aspirations around a number of things, but we've not taken action. there's talk about the technologies growing, and therefore we have to wait until the technology catches up so we know what we're doing. And I agree, and the nature of research, and I agree again with the Deputy of Trinity, the nature of the research is it will change the nature of what you do as you find out, and it's interesting about those, if you remove a species from one area, you could get an increase in predators or an increase in other or prey even that overwhelms that environment. You lack biodiversity, and I get that, and that's absolutely right. But the problem is if we leave all of our waters without any protection zones like this, then what we end up with is, if you like, a free-for-all. And I want to point out one really important thing which we mustn't forget, and that is the inextricable link between biodiversity and climate change. You cannot deal with one without the other. Biodiversity is one of the things that leads to our environment surviving and the sequestration of carbon, which is so important. Without that, we increase the amount of carbon that is reduced, or we decrease that amount that is absorbed. And that is a really important point for us to look at. We cannot separate those two issues. So any protection of biodiversity is important for climate change. And it's only recently, really, I think, that we're starting to take that marine biodiversity very seriously in terms of climate change. And what we seem to be getting into now is a debate around fishing. So I think fishermen and fisherwomen, and those who fish, I don't know what the term is, those who fish, as an industry, the fishing industry, let's call it that, we got there in the end, will recognise that the biggest threat to their industry is the destruction of biodiversity and the destruction of fishing stocks. And we have to have a difficult debate in the next 5 or 10 years over how they will genuinely be protected with climate change, with changing seas, with changing fish stocks, and how we're going to address that issue. And there is research, really clear research, is the bigger fish produce more young, and that's why you have protected areas, so that there are more mature fish there producing more young, and you increase fish stocks. That's the key area. And there's a strange sort of anomaly. I don't know if it's an anomaly or a contradiction. I don't know what it is. We have ministers talk about we've regained the management of our own waters, and that's a lovely headline. We have regained management of our own waters, but, and there's always a but there. But anything that's inappropriate to take action, inappropriate to take action that the French authorities believe are inappropriate. That doesn't strike me as us gaining control of our waters. That strikes us as gaining control of part of a negotiation process that we hope will go well for us. And that's a real concern, I think, regards what's happening with our fishing industry. And there is an irony there, because one criticism of the Blue Marine organisation that have done work on this, which are a very much a science-based organisation, is that we'll outsource our management of our waters, and we can do this locally. However, at the same time, we're saying we really can't do anything locally unless it's agreed by those larger organisations via the UK with the French authorities. You can't have it both ways. And what I'm heading towards, sir, I suppose, is to say that actually the development of a marine park and a conservation area in our seas of 30% is, I believe, the minimum that we will need to do in the long term to both protect biodiversity and to long-term protect our fishing stocks. And that is a difficult thing to say, and perhaps some will sit there and say, hang on, but what happens to our fishing industry? I do not believe there's evidence to say this will destroy our fishing industry. What will destroy our fishing industry is a lack of support from government, a lack of long-term thinking, and a lack of inclusion in those who know about fishing in our offshore waters, an involvement in this development. And in areas around the world where these marine parks have been developed with interaction with the fishing industry, they have worked well. And they have shown an improvement in fishing stocks and biodiversity in the area. And so I remind this Assembly that France has signed up to marine protection parks which stop dredging for their fishermen. They have marine fishing areas. And I wonder whether, and this is a question perhaps to the Assistant Minister who's bringing this, and indeed the Environment Minister, Whether there is an opportunity here with these marine parks to stop dredging, which is extraordinarily destructive to our seabed. And it's not just about fishing stocks and scallops and so on. It's about the marine environment and seagrasses and the biodiversity of seagrasses, which is the thing that is taking carbon out of the atmosphere. That ecosystem that exists underground is so vulnerable and can be destroyed. But if it's protected, we have areas which can increase. Both the range of animals that we have and also the range of plants which are so reliant upon. I would welcome no dredging zones. I think they're very important. I think that form of fishing is extraordinarily destructive. And I believe there are very few Jersey fishermen who actually do that. Any few parts of the fishing industry that do that. And I want to make a point, sir. These decisions are not due to the carbon neutral roadmap. The carbon neutral roadmap is due to the reality of what's happening on our planet and the destruction of biodiversity and climate change. That is what should be driving our carbon roadmap. The carbon roadmap is not something that exists that is going to determine what happens on our planet. That is much wider. So we're not just making decisions for a different policy that we've made. We should be making decisions for that wider issue of what's happening to our planet, to biodiversity around our island, and to the future of our marine environment. And so that's why, sir, I see this as an opportunity. And unless we put a timescale and a percentage on what this park would look like, this protected zone would look like, then, sir, I believe we are greenwashing. Because we are saying, yes, we will do something, but we're going to wait, and we need more research. I mean, it's complex and it's difficult, and actually there are lots of people involved. And there's the fishing industry, and there's the TECA, and there's France, and there's what might happen in the long term. And, some things have a knock-on elsewhere. Of course they do. But at some point, as an assembly and as a government, we need to step up and say, okay, the intention is simple. It's what they have done in so many different areas of the world, from Tuvalu to France to Britain to Ireland to all of these places, which they've put a marine park that is a protected area. It doesn't mean there will be no fishing in that area, but it will ban certain types of fishing, those that are damaging to the biodiversity and marine environment that exists in that area, so they become a stock area for other areas. That makes culture change in the way that we fish and the way we deal with our marine environment. And unless we lead the way in that culture change, then sir, in the long term, whoever's here in 10 years' time could be talking about a destruction of our fishing areas and talking about it from a completely different place. And I just wonder whether, sir, this is the right thing to do, whether the Assistant Minister is gaining headlines or greenwashing or not. I will be supporting this, and I think it's the right thing to support because it gives us a beginning point. It gives us a starting point. It can then be developed, and the concerns that have been raised so far, sir, need to be addressed. But, sir, to leave this as we are, with the amendment from the Minister, I think we are guilty of greenwashing with that, and we are guilty of not actually achieving what we want to achieve here, and I think in the long term needs to be achieved. So, sir, I leave it with that, and I let the Assembly make the decision. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Minister of the Environment.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to be able to follow Deputy Ward. There's quite a lot in what Deputy Ward had to say that I would go along with. But I think I need to put him right on a number of things. He suggests that there's been a lack of commitment towards conserving our marine resources and the wonderful biodiversity we have in our waters. Not true. He suggests that we are proposing kicking it in the long grass and talk of 10 years and so on. I don't think that is where we are. The truth is that when I got elected to the minister, as minister, I had to grapple with the structure of agreements with the French to try and achieve our goals, our objective, not an aspiration, the commitment that I made to conserve our seas, not just for the fishing industry, for fish stocks, but for our marine biodiversity. So I gave that commitment, and I found that it was not possible under the structure of agreements long-standing with the French, that we did not have the power. Deputy Guida explained it right. We have entered into, this island has entered into agreements that did not give us the power to do that until the Trade and Economic Cooperation Agreement came along. Now, I can tell the Deputy that was the only reason why I supported us signing up to the Trade and Economic Cooperation. There was no other reason for me that we were given the power, which the French would never have given us, to control their fishing activity in our 3 to 12 miles, which turns out some of the most richest seas around. Wonderful resources we have. And yet our seas are not just, they are hugely important for biodiversity, they are hugely important for their potential for blue carbon. Now, what we did, and the French have not liked this, let's be honest, and if one goes through all the sessions I've had with the Connétable St. Brelade on the fishing agreements, I'm grateful for the support that I've been given by his panel, because we've maintained that ongoing dialogue explaining where we are. Where we are is that we immediately hit a brick wall with a row of licensing, which caused us international headlines with gunboats being sent to Jersey and having our electricity cut off. We have stuck to our guns. And as we speak now, as I advised the panel the other week, we are now in a much better place. We still hear threats, but of course the French have got other things to do. There's general elections, and we're now on the threshold of international war. So, it's gone away. Peace has broken out, at least in the fishing area. Now, we've got, Deputy of St Martin spoke of our marine resources team. I have to tell you, that team is outstanding. We've got enormous science skills there. And hang on, well, no, there's an implication that somehow that we're starting. Deputy Ward said, we must approve this because we're going to make a start. Well, we've made a start well before that. We put the money in the government. You can't do marine science without money. We got several £million of money thanks to this assembly, and that is hugely being invested in marine resource, marine science. And that science tells us, what do the areas look like? What do we know about them? Just look at the map. The plan on the back of the island plan tells you these zones, how complex they are. See, that we are making enormous strides there in developing those conservation measures. So much so, the Attorney General advises us we've got a problem with our agreement, has this thing called a nature and extent clause. That was the typical ambiguity, one of the thousands of ambiguities in the UK, EU trade and economic had to be sorted out after, like the Northern Ireland Protocol, what have you. But anyway, we have put forward not our ideas for agreement and consultation. We've put forward our intention of how we plan to do nature and extent, which, as Deputy Guida told us, and Deputy Guida has put huge efforts into this. Métiers, fishing effort, trawls used, details of the fishing techniques, the species plan, and all the rest of it. All those are locked into the licenses, so we will be able to make sure those licenses impose conditions that we've not been able to do before, and they will bring our fishing effort down. And I think it's important. I mean, your Deputy Ward refers to, well, the French. It's all right with the French because they've got trawling, bans on trawling. Well, why don't they stop trawling in our area then? So, I'll tell you why they want to, because our seas are so rich with wildlife, huge species rich. So anyway, well, it is not kicking it down the road, so I accept the fact that he's right. I probably should not have used the word aspiration. It's a commitment. And that work is ongoing, and please I ask you to recognise the work done by the Marine Resources team. They're working with international universities. I can tell you now, the UK DEFRA, in my opinion, having had lots of discussions with them, see our fishing team as being one of the most highly skilled and highly knowledgeable fishing teams anywhere around the British Isles. And I'm well aware of the great successes in Lyme Bay and the Isle of Man. I've attended loads of it. It really works. The juveniles, the migration of juveniles, they populate other areas. These are things that there is firm commitment to do. So please, look, if you vote for this, please don't do it on the basis that we'll be dragging our feet, putting things off, and there's no commitment. Look, I think you can, you know, whoever is the next Environment Minister, I've laid the foundation for them. We are in a good place, miles better place under the TECA. We've already put those proposals. They've gone to the EU. This is what we're going to do, we've told them. We don't have to ask their agreement. The agreement says all those proposals for nature and extent have to be based on scientific evidence. We're doing that. We've done it. Or they have to be fairly applied in... You can't discriminate against one side or the other, either us or the French. And they have to be given prior notice, and we're interpreting prior notice as 30 days. And we've given 30 days notice. So there we are. So please, look, what I've done in my amendment is to say, yes, we'll make a special plan. We need that special plan. And we put a date in it, 2025. If you could do it next year, fine. But I tell you what, give us some more money, give the next minister some more money and resources, and it can be done. But there we are. Thank you, sir. So I can't, with the greatest of regret, because I really like Senator Farnham. I think his heart is in the right place. But please, this is a case of, please, let the brain follow. You know, but perhaps that's too harsh. But thank you.
Thank you. Deputy Morell.
Thank you, sir. And of course, the Minister decides whether he supports something on the basis of the proposition, not whether he likes the person bringing the proposition or not, I should hope. I want to support this, but I don't know if I can. We have the Environment Minister, we have a former Environment Minister, we have the chair of the Environment Scrutiny Panel, we have obviously the Assistant Environment Minister, all speaking against this proposition. And I don't believe one of them is speaking against this proposition because they don't want to protect Jersey's waters. I believe they do. And so that concerns me a great deal. I'm also concerned, which is what prompted my question to the Attorney General, but I'm also concerned about what is it that we're voting for here. And I start with the Coastal National Park. As a member of the Planning Committee for the last 2 or 3 years, I've seen how the concept of the Coastal National Park is misunderstood enormously and misused very, very often. There's a reality about the Coastal National Park. It doesn't exist. There is no Coastal National Park. Now, because in the Island Plan, all the Island Plan does is denote spatial areas for development. So the Coastal National Park is actually a planning term to denote stronger controls against development. That's all it is. Now, there is a Coastal National Park, and the people who run that, Mr. Stenford and Mr. Hopley, came to scrutiny when I was on the Environment Scrutiny Panel back in 2018, 2019, to talk about the difficulties there were with creating the actual Coastal National Park. So we have a Coastal National Park planning zone, but that isn't a park. And there is now a Coastal National Park organisation and company, and they will be, and a board being developed, etc., and they will be creating the actual Coastal National Park. And if I was a betting man, sir, I would put money on it that the actual Coastal National Park will not resemble the Coastal National Park in terms of its planning area. They're two different things. And so this is why I asked the question of the Attorney General. Sir, in the amendment to the amendment, as proposed, it says to develop a network of marine protected areas within a national marine park. But that national marine park doesn't exist. It isn't there today. The Island Plan cannot create the national marine park. It's not possible. The Island Plan just talks about development and where you may or may not develop. The Environment Minister has no power of his own to create a national marine park. In fact, I think the Parks Law sits under the Infrastructure Minister. And I may be incorrect on that, but I think that's where the Parks Law sits, sir. So it may not even be for the Environment Minister to bring forward the National Marine Park. So the question I have to ask of Senator Farnham is, what exactly does this proposition ask the Minister to do? Because we are amending the Island Plan. we're not creating parks. The island plan cannot create parks. And this is my real concern, that we're doing, a lot of outsiders, perhaps a lot of islanders, that is, may look into the Assembly and think, well, that's classic States Assembly. They voted for something because it sounds good, because we actually all agree that we want to protect Jersey's waters, but are we voting for something that is completely empty? Because it can't be done. This doesn't actually create a national marine park at all. So, I mean, it is possible that Senator Farnham's, and I genuinely don't know, this is me speculating, it is possible that from Senator Farnham's perspective, getting these words into the island plan creates a momentum. It's symbolic and it creates a momentum to be built upon, etc., etc. And that's absolutely laudable. The trouble is it also has this thing of 2025, so it has a deadline for which this National Marine Park is meant to be created. But as I've said, I don't believe the Environment Minister has the ability to create that. And the island plan certainly doesn't have the ability to create it. So if it is a matter of getting momentum started, how are we actually going to get this created by 2025? We'll have to have a new proposition altogether, because we can vote on this today, and I honestly, actually, as I speak it through with the Assembly now, I actually think we'd be voting for something which would be greenwashing, I'm afraid, or blue washing, perhaps in this case. And so I'm concerned, because I don't want to not vote for it. I enjoy scuba diving. I've said that in the Assembly before. There is no greater place on Earth, as far as I'm concerned, than underwater. It's absolutely fascinating. And Jersey's waters, it's always frustrated me, the number of people from Jersey who say, oh yes, I dive, I love scuba diving, but I only dive on the Great Barrier Reef or in Thailand or somewhere like this. I'm like, come dive in Jersey. The waters here are spectacular. Just because they're not Barrier Reef doesn't mean they're not spectacular. They absolutely are. I've also, with my own eyes, seen the devastation created by dredging for scallops. I've seen great railway tracks, merle beds just destroyed by dredging in the island's waters. And so I know that, in my view, needs to be stopped. But this doesn't stop that. This proposition will not stop dredging. I'll tell you what will stop dredging: the Environment Minister bringing control to stop dredging. That's how you stop dredging. This won't. And so I really ask Senator Farnham, please, in your summing up, tell me why what we're doing here today has substance. Because I am concerned this does not have any substance, and that there is a symbolism about it, but that's all. I think Jersey would do well with the National Marine Park. I think, and I can see perhaps the idea here in the senator's mind, a vision of sustainability, Jersey being renowned worldwide for sustainable water management of its waters, where people can go scuba diving, where jet skis don't exist, that's my aside, and where we are known for harnessing the power and the beauty of our marine ecosystems. And tourists will flock here as a result, and I've no doubt that that's correct. The trouble is, this doesn't do that. And so I share the vision that I believe Senator Farnham wants to create, and I want to help him with that vision. I want to deliver it. I think everyone in this Assembly does as well. I'm just not convinced this is the right way to do it. So yes, I ask Senator Farnham, please explain to me and other members why this amendment works and will deliver what he says it will deliver. Because at the moment, I don't believe it will. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Deputy. Does any other member wish to speak on the amendment to the amendment? If no member wishes to speak, I call upon Senator Farnham to reply.
Thank you, sir. And I have to thank members that spoke, and I can't ever recall a time where I've heard so many members speak so passionately in favour of something, but are then going to vote against it. But this is, after all, the Island Plan debate. Deputy Tadias asked a a number of questions, and so did number of other members, about why we need a national park, why we need a national park designation. And it's quite clear, sir, that marine parks are a recognised concept and a recognised and utilised planning designation around the world, sir. If we don't look to encapsulate all of the good work being done with the MPAs into one larger area, then we, in my opinion, sir, stand at risk of seeing quite a disparate approach to solving the problem. We end up with a lot of small marine protected areas, none really connected, sir, difficult to manage, and collectively not having the required impact that I'm sure all of us would want, which is to create a large, sustainable area, sustainable protected area for our islands, for our industries, and other very good reasons. Deputy Taddier also asked about the survey, sir, which was commissioned by For Insight, sir, and a number of members have, members of the public, there were questions about the questions themselves, sir. Some people thought the short questionnaire was very good. Some challenged it, but I don't think there's any doubt that if you ask any islander a simple question, just put it into one simple question: do we want more protection of our waters and an end to harmful fishing practices? Quite clearly, sir, the answer is yes. The answer to the questionnaire, good sample, 2,500 islanders partook in it. 85% of them gave a positive income. I think if we ask a simpler question to islanders, do we want more protection of our waters, not the French's waters or the UK's waters, they're our waters, do we want more protection, and do we want to end harmful fishing practices? I think we'd probably get 90 or 95% saying yes, we would. The Constable of St Brelard's challenged the science. Well, I'm not a scientist, but I find it bizarre that people are wanting to challenge the science around protecting marine environments. The science, and there is an abundance of science, and I can send him lots of links. If he's got nothing better to do this evening, I'll be happy to share a huge amount of science about the importance, and Deputy Ward alluded to it, the importance of protecting our marine habitats. And I will just come back to that shortly. The TECA, sir, and I think the Attorney General alluded to this, does allow Jersey and its partners, all the other signatories to the TECA, to take measures for environmental reasons. And Deputy Ward raised a good point. Is there an opportunity here to work with the French? Because as nations, us a very, very small island nation, them a very large nation, it appears we seem to share the same ambition with our marine parks and protecting our waters. And I would ask the Minister, the Environment Minister, who I also like, sir, most of the time, I'd ask him, sir, of course we have worked on Council of Ministers for almost 4 years together, sir, to usually great successful outcomes. Has the Minister actually talked to his counterpart, the French Environment Minister, about Jersey and France meeting their environmental commitments, which sit outside perhaps the very core issues that the Assistant Minister and Senator Gorster are dealing with ably, and I commend them for the work they're doing there, sir. I want to be clear, sir, that this will not kill off our fishing fleet. I mean, there are a heck of a lot of red herrings flying around, sir, if you'll excuse the reference. Might be even more so if we get this through. It's not envisaged that these areas will be no-take zones. They will prohibit damaging fishing methods and encourage better practices for fishing, better catches. So, and of course, Blue Marine have been working very closely with the Marine Resources team, and we all share the same ambitions here. I guess the debate is about how we get there. We can do what we've always done and kick the can down the road and say we need more information, or we can set ourselves a target now and work towards delivering that. I mean, the island plan doesn't just cover buildings, as Deputy Guida, I think, referred to. I mean, that's just, I think that is slightly misleading, sir, but I don't mean to talk down the Deputy, but it doesn't just cover buildings. The Minister has put in this amendment for marine protected areas. Marine protected areas are very clearly a part of this. And of course, the ambition of the 30% aim has now over 100 countries, part of the alliance, supporting this. The Deputy Morel asked what this hopes to achieve. And first of all, sir, I think maybe I need to ask the Attorney General to clarify this. But I believe the island plan can designate a marine park area. Of course, the real power required, if that's the right word, to make it a marine park designated area, as we all wish to see it, will require careful fisheries management legislation, so to give it the substance that it needs. The designation of marine park in this amendment simply seeks to create the area, to identify the area, to give clarity about the area we're initially talking about. And of course, Deputy Ward said he didn't think it was enough. I perhaps agree with him, but we've got to take this, I think, a step at a time. And I thought that initially to base the size of our inaugural marine park on the Oceans Alliance targets that now 30% of territorial waters that 100 countries have now signed up to would be a good starting point. So there are a number of, if this is approved, so there are a number of policies and action points that will need to follow. Members will allow me just to check my points. First of all, the designation of marine park covering at least 30% of Jersey's waters matches global targets, so that's an important point to make. The prohibition of destructive bottom-towed fishing gear and dredging within the designation has to be legislated for. It is also essential to agree a fair and just transition plan for the approximately, I think it's 8 Jersey fishing vessels that currently use this type of equipment. We're not in the business of taking livelihoods away from fishers. We're in a business of keeping them in business and helping them, financially helping them, whatever that may look like, to either exit the industry or hopefully transition to more acceptable fishing practices. To promote low-impact fisheries within the marine park through a low-impact sustainable fisheries strategy, and there's quite a bit of work to do there, so, and to help to fulfil Jersey's carbon neutral targets by expanding our blue carbon habitats. As stated in the amendment, a marine park seeks protection from inappropriate development and damaging activities. We know that. The Bridging Island Plan and the Marine Park, as part of it, will facilitate development control, which will help ensure that activities such as the dumping of material, expansion of harbours, coastal development, leisure, cable routing and the development of offshore renewable energy are all assessed in an appropriate manner with a view to the habitats they may have impact upon. It's not all about fishing. There are a number of other very good reasons why we need to do this. And therefore, as I've said, sir, fisheries legislation will need to be adapted to take all of this into account. The marine protected areas as part of the package. Fishing, as I said so earlier, is a form of development. It is subject to environmental law like any other industry. So to conclude, sir, as I've said before, Jersey's marine environments with their kelp forests, seagrass habitats, huge potential to grow those seagrass and merle beds in this designated area, showcase some of the best shallow waters in the British Isles. And many species, many new species now call these waters home: dolphins, seals, tuna, the odd sunfish as well, sir. Our marine park would include all shallow marine habitats extending approximately to the 20-metre depth contour and would incorporate the existing MPAs. Such an area, sir, would be several times the size of our own island. A great important area. I mean, it sounds a lot, sir, but in terms of our ocean, it is a tiny amount. But it is a good start, sir. And these areas provide extensive ecosystems and services, and their protection would allow for substantial growth of our natural environments at sea. If we don't do this now, then when will we do it? The propensity is that we continue to talk about the Marine Spatial Plan and adding other marine protected areas, as we have now around the Minkies and the Ecrahos and one or two other areas. I fear that the same will happen to this, as it does with many other ideas and ambitions and aspirations that come to this assembly. They get pushed out for a number of reasons, but all because we need to compile more information. And this amendment didn't come to the assembly claiming to have all of the details, but it did specifically set a target date, which is ample time to continue the very good work of Blue Marine and the Marine Resources Department in providing that detail, fishing legislation, how we work with the industry to perhaps reshape and re-equip our fishing fleet to take advantage of all the benefits this will bring. Of course, the easy solution today is to vote against this amendment and carry on with our plan, which is well-meaning, sir. And I do support the Minister with the spatial plan, but my fear is that we just won't encompass enough area. We'll continue to either grow the existing MPAs or introduce new MPAs, which will create quite a disparate marine environmental protection policy. The tough call, sir, and I believe the right call, is to support this. That is the challenging solution, sir. It will force us to put policies in place which will enable this to happen. It will force us to introduce sensible fisheries management legislation. It will force us to talk to the French about our shared environmental ambitions with our marine parks, sir. It will force us to have some tough and difficult conversations, sir. But unless we have those conversations, and we perhaps keep circling around this, then we won't get anywhere. So, sir, having listened carefully and heard the mood of the Assembly today, I understand how members feel. I understand that they might have difficulty in supporting this, but if we support this today, it won't be the end of the world. It won't cause insurmountable difficulties, sir, but it will create challenges for us to face up to, which, if we are serious about protecting our precious and indispensable environments, so on land and at sea, it will force us to have these difficult conversations, and it will force us to deliver what we all know is absolutely right, not just for islanders today, sir, but for future generations of islanders. Thank you, sir.
Do you call for the appel?
Please, sir.
The appel is being called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via Teams are invited to cast their votes in the chat channel. I ask the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber. Deputy Young, you'll need to tell us your vote, as we haven't yet adjusted the system, so you can vote from there.
Do you want me to speak, to give that verbally or
verbally? Yes.
I'm going to vote contrary.
Thank you. Those, the ones in front of me, just those. Yes. If all members have the opportunity of casting their votes, I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been rejected by my calculations. There were 12 votes for in the chamber and 2 on the chat, making a total of 14, and 16 in the chamber and 11, possibly more in the chat, making a total of 27 contrary. The greffier will give you the accurate number.
May we have the 14, please, sir?
Yes.
Those voting for Senator Farnham and Mesick, the Conotabs of St Peter, St Mary, St Juan and St Martin, Deputy Southern, Dublé, Morale, Nehegera, Ayer and Ward. And Deputy Pamplin and Deputy Tadier in the chat.
Thank you. We now return to the 88th Amendment. Does any member wish to speak on the amendment? Yes, Senator Farnham.
Thank you, sir. And I wanted to, of course, thank all members who spoke and participated and ultimately supported my attempt to amend this. Of course, that is now fallen away for the time being, sir. And I just wanted to say that I will support the Minister now on this, because we're moving in the right direction together, as I said before, so I think our aims are united in this. And if we have to do it in a slightly different way, of course, then I will support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Does any member wish to speak on the 88th Amendment? I call upon the Minister to reply.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful having had quite a long but I think a very worthwhile debate, because I think we covered all the sort of current issues that we face in managing our marine environment and trying to give it greater priority. I think, sir, so I think I'm really pleased now to go to a positive note. Obviously, the amendment I've brought seeks to, as I said, pick up the strong motivation from Senator Farnham, but embody that in a way that works within the various procedures and processes we've got. Now, I think I'd invite members to look at one of the I think it's quite hard to do, I've found so far, in going through these island plan amendments, and I think members will find this as well. It is worthwhile as well having a copy of the plan together, because reading the plan as to what we're doing makes it very sensible, very clear and understandable. There's a very simple, what we're doing here is I'm amending Strategic Proposal 3, which is about 4 lines on page 29. Page 29 is in the green box, and I think it's worth reading. It says, the Minister of the Environment will undertake further work to develop a marine spatial plan to organise human and marine resources and activities in Jersey territorial waters to be consistent with our environmental, economic objectives, will inform the policies of the next island plan and support coordinated policy development and decision-making in all aspects affecting the marine environment. And the amendment I've put gives that's the proposal as drafted, and I think the paragraphs explaining it on that page pretty well cover all the points that members have spoken about in today's debate. I'm adding to it this amendment that we will put a timescale, that the spatial plan will be before 2025, and that's really about resources and how quickly we can get the new minister can get on with it, and then also a commitment that follows that also commitment after the word territorial waters in the strategic policy to say will be with the word to develop a network of marine protected areas, which will, so in other words, I think achieving the objectives that we all share. So I'm grateful, sir, that we got to that point on a positive note, sir, and so I think that's my summing up, and I make my amendment, sir. Thank you.
And the appell has been called for. Members are invited to return to their seats. Those joining the meeting via Teams are invited to cast their votes in the chat channel, and I ask the greffier to open the voting for members in the chamber.
Sir, I vote poor. I take it I need to do that verbally.
Thank you very much, yes. I think later on today you'll be able to vote from that seat. All members on the chat and in the chamber have the opportunity of casting their votes. Then I ask the greffier to close the voting. The amendment has been adopted. 40 votes for, 1 vote contra.
The Conotab of St Mary voted contra.
Now we move to the 51st amendment.
Sir.
Yes.
If I may, sir, having the 51st amendment is substantially the same, or the second part, if you like, of the 88th amendment. Instead of the Minister amending the 51st amendment, he decided to bring a separate amendment to the island plan.
Yes.
And I believe we've pretty much had the whole debate, and I don't think there'd be any merit in repeating the debates or part of it, or trying to raise any new arguments, given the debate, the very good debate we've just had, sir. So I would like to once again thank all members who did support the previous amendment to the amendment. I think, sir, we need to circle around in a different way now and approach the ambition we all have slightly differently, sir. So a bit of a reset, I think, a continuation for the fight for Marine Park will continue, sir, but perhaps in a slightly different way. And to that end, sir, I'd like to withdraw Amendment 51.
Thank you. So the next amendment is the 43rd amendment, lodged by Deputy Tadier, and I have asked the greffier to read the amendment.
After the words "the Draft Island Plan 2022 to 25," insert the words "except that A, on page 38, the words "at higher densities" should be deleted, B, the existing strategic proposal 4, a West of Ireland planning framework, should be deleted, and there should be inserted the following new strategic proposal 4, a West of Ireland master plan. The Minister for the Environment will bring forward a master plan for Lekenevay and adjacent areas, including Jersey Airport, in consultation with key stakeholders no later than May 2023. C. Within proposals Sustainable Communities Fund, after the words future development of town should be inserted the words and other parts of the island's built-up area. And D. The draft Island Plan 2022 to 25 should be further amended in such respects as may be necessary consequent upon the adoption of paragraphs A, B and C.
Yes, Dr. Tudio.
Thank you, sir. So before I get into the main part of the debate, can I just first of all give my apologies for not being in the Assembly in person. I'm feeling fairly sorry for myself at home, so I'm on day 10 of a COVID isolation and I'm still getting a positive result back on the lateral flow. So obviously I don't want to put anyone else at risk. So I'm going to carry on. My dog's settled on the sofa, sir. I'm not expecting him to bark at any point. But let's hope no one comes knocking at the door, because that does set him off. But turning to the issue of Lekenevay and the built-up area, the reason I was asking for clarification earlier from the Minister is because I could accept his amendment that he's put into Part B, sir. So I'll just talk members through what I'm asking for. Is that the main thrust of my amendment is I'm very unhappy with the continued presence of the phrase higher density, so buildings at higher densities. That's what I've been asking to remove as a presumption in the new island plan, the Bridging Island Plan. The second part is that I've been asking in Part B, I'm asking for effectively a focused master plan on the Lekenevay area and the adjacent areas, which would go up to the airport. I am happy with I'm willing to accept what the Minister's come back with for that. He's worded it slightly differently. The Minister's approach is that there would be a planning framework. My thoughts are that's too vague. And he said that it would also comprise a series of more focused master plans for Lekenevay in consultation with key stakeholders. So for that part of the amendment, I'm happy to accept it, sir. I can talk to it briefly, but I would like to know, sir, procedurally, and I don't know if it's in order now to ask that, just so I know how to frame my arguments and how much effort to put into either part, whether or not the Minister, whether these two parts can be separated, so if they need to be voted on altogether.
Well, the debate has begun now on the amendment, and you'll address the Assembly as long as you think appropriate, and then it'll be second, and then of course we'll go straight in to the amendment, to your amendment lodged by the Minister. And the Minister will, and the Assembly have heard that you don't object to B, which of course really expands upon your own B, doesn't it, in your amendment? And that's the way things will stand. There'll be debates on the amendment and the amendment, your amendment, having regard to what you've just helpfully said about your acceptance of part of the Minister's amendment.
That's fine, sir. That's great. I'm mindful in all of these things that whilst we try and speak to each amendment and each amendment to the amendment, there's invariably going to be an overlap, and so I won't repeat later on. But to provide the context, let me start. So I was pleased to be brought up in St Brelard in Lekenevay, and although I can't claim to be born there, because people of my age didn't tend to be born where they lived. They went to the centralised hospital. I was very much a child of that area, and I know, like Deputy Truscott, we went to the local schools there. I would walk to Lekenevay School when I was there. I would cycle to Lemoy School from my house in Don Farm. And I had, of course, the rite of passage of having a couple of paper rounds, one in the morning and one in the evening. I know the area well, sir, and I know its people and the feel for it. And one good thing is that there's this relatively new talk, not just in the island plan, but in the art strategy, for example, about the creation of the sense of place. And there is no need to reinvent the wheel when it comes to this area, Red Houses, Le Kennevet in St. Brelard, because it has already a very strong sense of identity and a strong sense of place there. What I'm concerned about primarily here is that there's a presumption in this island plan that there will be higher densities when it comes to new developments in the area, sir. And I perhaps don't need to tell anyone who's a representative or knows the area very well that if you look at a map of the densities of the island and you focus in on Clos de Sable, Le Kennevet Park and the surrounding estates, you'll see it's very very densely populated already. There is talk in this new plan about making Le Kennevet a second town. Now in some ways, it doesn't make sense because the plan clearly talks about the fact that it already is a de facto secondary centre. And I think it's very much a double-edged sword, sir, because on the one hand, I think it's just stating something that's true already. It's a truism, and you'll find no shortage of residents of the area who are really happy with the fact that they don't need to leave Le Kennevet for their day-to-day needs. In fact, you'll find many people who simply take a bus ride into town as a kind of holiday, if you like, because they've got everything on their doorstep, and they may even work in the area. So, and that's a good thing. But what I was really keen to make sure is that if we are going to consider this area to be a town, a secondary town, then I think we need to make sure that there's some similar investment that goes in with that. And that's, of course, why I put in part C, to make sure, because there was this strange anomaly in the plan as it stood, that there was money that could be raised from development charges, but it was explicitly stated that it should be just for St Helier. So I've removed that, and that's not just going to be a potential benefit for the Le Kennevet area. It does mean that other areas like Maufond Village or any of the parish villages, wherever they might be, and conurbations, they can also benefit from those funds and for regeneration, and quite right too. So when we think about the Le Kennevet area, and I started off my proposition in this way, with the somebody had written on the wall, it's a Banksy quote actually, I remember when all this was trees, and that might not be the case in this area, sir, but you'll find a lot of people who say, I can remember when all this was sand dunes. And we know that Les Blanches Banques, they did extend right up to where we know the precinct is in Le Kennevet. And we've seen the old photos, for those of us who don't necessarily have the living memory of that, about what kind of area it was. So the concern I've got is that if we proceed down this route of a presumption of higher densities, and remember this is exactly what we're talking about. We're not saying a presumption of like for like being replaced or like for like with 10%. It is already a very highly built up area, and it means that when planning applications are put in, there is already a presumption that you will be able to rebuild something substantial in its place, which is comparable And the amendment that the ministers sought to put in there, which says to higher densities, but which are appropriate for the area, it's meaningless effectively, because the argument can always be made that, well, this is appropriate for the area because it's a built-up area. But what I'm asking members to agree, and I know that this is a problem because it's a very specific, area-specific problem, but it's something which can be replicated throughout the whole island, and I would ask members to consider if this was in their own constituency or in the own place where they live, how they would feel about wording in a new island plan which actually gave a presumption of higher densities. Let me just read, sir. I'm not going to go on for too long, members will be pleased to know, but I do have to make a couple of points here. So I was alarmed when I read the paragraph. As one of the island's main urban centres, Llanelli can continue to provide a focus on new development, enabling investment and regeneration, being supported as a sustainable alternative place for new development to happen which might otherwise be located in St Helier. That's all fine, don't have a problem with that. Of course, the devil is in the detail, and I want to know what actually that means. But it goes on to say, by encouraging the redevelopment of already developed land and buildings at higher density, so it talks about encouraging redevelopment at higher densities, and by accommodating a broader range of employment uses, this is how they will achieve their objectives. And that's the problem I really have, is that, in a sense, you don't need to encourage developers to put in applications for high density developments, because they do that anyway. I've seen it so many times, and I'm not the kind of deputy who's spent most of his political life focusing or seeking out planning issues or trying to get before the planning applications panel. You don't need to do that because the constituents come and find you. And I've tried to be sparing about the times where I represent the local communities on those kind of issues, because of course there are always two sides to the story, and we have a planning panel to consider the regulations and the guidelines and to what is acceptable and what isn't, and we have planning processes and appeals. But of course I stood back in 2008 and on the premise and on the one of my policies was that I would oppose inappropriate development in Llanelli and in St Brelard, and that applies to the whole island, sir. And if I see something which I think is inappropriate for the area, wherever it is, I won't be supporting it, and I'll be applying that principle to all of this debate, sir. And I know what's going to happen is that, so let me finish that point, is that I've already been to planning committees, and we know how it works. You get a plot of land, you knock down one house, and you want to rebuild as much as you can on it, because of course there's a profit motive. So you try and put 4 units on it. Planning comes back and says, no, you can't do that, it's too big. Sometimes it might even be accepted, but there's such a public outcry that the panel rejects it, and then you go through this process, and then you end up with 3 or 2 units on it where before you had 1. And people think, oh, that's great, we've had a victory, but in fact, you look at the person who put the application in, who probably doesn't live in the area, may not even live in Jersey, rubbing their hand because that's actually what they wanted. You know, you aim high and you bring it down. But we've got this remarkable situation now where we've got a St Brelard's deputy in the minister who says he supports protecting areas and green spaces and doesn't want to see overdevelopment. We've got an already highly developed, one of the most densely populated areas of the island in those estates. And we're not just saying we'll have higher densities, but we're encouraging the development of higher density applications. So I'm wondering, I don't think it's outlandish to say that are we going to be seeing more overly audacious planning applications? And are we going to see some planning applications which would be rejected because they're not dense enough. So are we going to get to the point where somebody comes to the planning panel and the minister says, "Oh no, this is too modest. You can get another floor on that. You can get another couple of units in that. You can take a couple of car park spaces out of here. You don't need them. The Kennebay's got a great bus service, and you can pack that in even more densely. You should do a garden grab here. You can easily fit another unit in there. You can convert that shed into a single unit and let it out for somebody who's unqualified." Is this actually what we're going to be seeing from an outgoing St Brelard Deputy Minister, who's actually encouraging higher density development in the St Brelard, in the Kennebay, Red Houses area? And where's it going to end, of course, because this isn't just limited to the periphery, the perimeter of Clos de Sable, Kennebay, Don Farm, Petit, Route de Miel, Pontmarquet Estate, Route de Genet, Lemoy areas, which go right up to Lemoy School. It's going up to the airport now. We've got the new school there. Are we going to say, actually, this is a complete free-for-all now? So anything from the Lemoy area down to Regis Garden, to the synagogue, all that way up to the airport, possibly encroaching more into the fields that you've got on Rue de Broncrier. Is it just going to be a free-for-all now in that area, which is already highly populated? It's busy because people like coming to the west. They don't necessarily want to stay in Le Kennebay for ages and ages, but they do want to go there to shop. They want to go there on the way to St Brelard's Bay. They want to go there on the way to La Polante, on the way to Le Bray, to walk their dogs onto the sand dunes. And they will be coming into the area. And I would say that no, we do accept where we are, that we have a very high densely populated area, and most people are willing to accept that. They like it, and they want to be part of the vision for the future, where they can be part of those discussions. They don't want to be a community, and I don't want to be representing a community where we have things done to us. We want that to be within our in our remit to have some say about how we deliver those things together. And I think the first thing to do, therefore, to show that we are willing to have the discussions about St Brelard perhaps becoming more of a recognised urban area, is to say, okay, but fair's fair. We accept that we will always be a suburban urban area, but we don't want the presumption written in black and white that you will encourage higher density development in our communities. And I would fight for the same for the other villages and the other small towns that are around in Jersey, sir. So I make that proposition, sir, for those amendments, and obviously ask for that to be seconded and wait to hear what the Minister has to say.
Thank you. Is the amendment seconded?
Yeah, sir.
Thank you. I see the time. Is the adjournment proposed?
Yes, sir.
Seconded?
Yes, sir.
Yes. State stands adjourned until 2:15.